The retired Navy SEAL came to Hollow Pine Ranch with a newborn against his chest, two exhausted children behind him, and a German shepherd standing guard at their side. He did not ask for pity. He asked for work and a dry corner of the barn. Claire Donovan opened the gate, not knowing that one small mercy would challenge a whole town to remember what courage looked like. Cold rain moved across the Wallowa foothills in long silver threads, tapping the tin roof of Hollow Pine Ranch until the whole place seemed to be listening. Claire Donovan had just dragged the front gate closed with both hands, the chain wet and stiff between her fingers, when she saw the figures at the far end of the drive. At first, she thought the storm had bent the shadows into human shape. Then the tallest one stumbled beneath the yellow barn light. He had a baby bundled against his chest, not in a clean carrier or a soft blanket from some store in town, but wrapped inside a faded navy sweatshirt that had seen too many washes and too much weather. Behind him walked a girl with a paper grocery sack held like a treasure. Beside the girl came a little boy whose boots were too large, each step making a tired slap in the mud. A German shepherd moved ahead of them all, low and watchful, sable coat darkened by rain, one torn ear pricked toward Claire as if he had already measured the distance between her hand and the rifle on the porch. Claire stood still. Ranch women learned to stand still before they learned to trust. She had learned it the hard way from bankmen with soft voices from cattle buyers who smiled at her like she was a child in her late husband's hat, from neighbors who offered advice that always ended with the same sentence: "You cannot keep this place alone." The man stopped 10 feet from the gate. He did not lift his hands in a dramatic plea. He shifted the newborn higher against his chest because the baby made a thin sound, more breath than cry, and his face changed in a way Claire understood before she wanted to. Fear for a child stripped pride clean off a person. He was tall, broad-shouldered, built like a man who knew how to carry heavy things without complaining, but there was nothing proud in the way he looked at her. Rain ran from his short brown hair and down the scar at his jaw. His boots were split at one seam. The girl behind him tried to hide a shiver and failed. The little boy leaned against the shepherd's flank. The dog did not move away. "Ma'am," the man said, and his voice was rough from cold or exhaustion or 100 swallowed words. "My name is Wade Callahan. I can fix fence, pumps, engines, roofs, tack, pretty much anything that is given up and needs arguing with. I do not drink, I do not steal, I do not bring trouble on purpose." He glanced down at the baby. "My children need somewhere dry tonight. If you give me work, we will sleep in the barn until I earn better." The words were simple. That made them worse. Claire had heard plenty of men beg in ways that made room for performance. Wade Callahan sounded as if begging was a tool he hated using, but had finally taken from the shelf because his children were out of options. The girl tightened her grip on the paper sack. Claire saw the label on a small can of formula through a tear in the side. Nearly empty. The boy lifted his chin and tried to look brave, which was the surest way to look 5 years old. "Ranger does not bite good people," he said, then blinked as if he had not meant to speak. The shepherd flicked one ear. Claire almost laughed, and the almostness of it surprised her. Laughter had become a stranger in the house behind her. It used to live there. It used to sit at the kitchen table with Aaron Donovan, who could make her laugh while a storm blew sideways, and the cabs were late, and the generator was making a death rattle. Aaron had been gone 18 months. Since then, Hollow Pine had held plenty of noise, wind in the cottonwoods, hooves in the mud, bank notices under the door, but little that sounded like home. She looked past Wade to the road. No truck, no headlights, no one waiting to pull a trick. Just the wet ribbon of gravel disappearing into the dark. "Where is your vehicle?" she asked. Wade's mouth tightened. 7 miles back. Transmission quit. I carried the baby from there. Claire looked at the girl's shoes, then the boy's muddy cuffs. They walked 7 miles in this? Not all of it, Wade said. Riley carried the bag. Ben rode Ranger some. The shepherd, hearing his name, turned his head and regarded Claire with solemn dislike, as if he had made a formal complaint about the road conditions and expected action. Claire should have said no. She had a bank deadline 14 days away and $47 in the coffee tin above the stove. She had 3 sections of fence sagging a pump that coughed rust, hay invoices unpaid, and a stack of letters from Owen Price folded under a magnet on the refrigerator. Owen owned the bank now, in every way that mattered, though the sign still had his father's name on it. He had wanted Hollow Pine for years. A widowed woman with debt was not a neighbor to him. She was a date on a calendar. Claire could hear Marlene Foster's voice from the diner telling her sweet as pie and twice as heavy, "Honey, mercy is noble, but it does not pay a note." No, mercy did not pay a note. But neither had all her hardness. The baby whimpered. Wade's hand, huge and cracked at the knuckles, covered the bundle with the care of a man touching something made of light. "Her name is Emma," he said, not because Claire had asked, but because the child had made herself known. 3 months. Claire felt something pull inside her, sharp and quiet. Aaron had wanted a daughter. He used to point at the empty room off the hall and say it had good morning light for a crib. After the funeral, Claire had shut that door and stacked boxes in front of it. Boxes were easier than ghosts. The baby made the sound again. Claire reached for the gate chain. "The barn is dry," she said. "Mostly. There is a stall near the tack room that blocks the wind. You can use it tonight." Wade's eyes changed only a little, but in that little change, she saw how close he had been to falling apart. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. At Sunrise, you work. I mean real work. Hollow Pine is not a charity." "No, ma'am." "And the dog stays under control." The boy frowned. "Ranger controls himself." The girl whispered, "Ben." Claire opened the gate. The hinges gave their usual complaint, low and rusty. Ranger stepped through first, not rudely, not aggressively, but with the grave caution of an old soldier entering unknown ground. He sniffed once at Claire's boot, once at the gatepost, then looked toward the barn. A faint growl started in his chest and stopped. Wade noticed. Claire noticed Wade noticing. There it was, a small thing, no bigger than a breath. The dog had found something wrong. Claire almost asked, but Emma stirred again and Riley's teeth clicked with cold. "Come on," Claire said, "before that baby decides to judge us all." Ben stared up at her. "Babies judge constantly." His eyes widened. "I knew it." Wade looked at his son, and a tired smile tugged at one corner of his mouth. It was gone quickly, but not before Claire saw the father beneath the ruin of the day. The barn smelled of hay leather, old pine, and the stubborn dampness that crept into every Oregon spring. Claire switched on the overhead light. It buzzed twice before settling. The horses shifted in their stalls, ears turning toward the strangers. Ranger moved in a slow arc, cataloging corners, door gaps, the ladder to the loft, the stacked feed bags. He paused near the far wall where the old machine shed connected to the barn, nose lifting. Wade set the baby gently in Riley's arms long enough to shrug off his soaked jacket and spread it over an overturned crate. The girl took Emma with practiced seriousness, though her arms trembled. She was 9 maybe, but grief had made her older at the eyes. Claire recognized that too. Loss had a habit of promoting children without asking permission. "I have blankets," Claire said, "and a kettle. There is powdered milk in the kitchen, but I do not know if it is the right kind for a baby." Wade's face held a flash of pain and embarrassment cut with gratitude. "Anything warm will help. I have some formula left." "How long since she ate?" "Too long." He did not explain.
Claire did not force him. Some answers did not need details to be understood. She went to the house and returned with 2 wool blankets, a clean sheet,
a thermos of warm water, crackers, apples, and the last half-loaf of bread from her counter. She added a jar of peanut butter because children in trouble needed calories more than speeches. Riley watched the food as if it might vanish. Ben whispered to Ranger that peanut butter was not for dogs unless humans were distracted. Ranger looked offended by the accusation and then very interested in the jar. Claire set everything on a workbench. "Eat slow," she said. "Stomachs get mean when they have been empty." Wade nodded and the children obeyed him before he even spoke. There was command in him, but not the loud kind. He had the sort of quiet that made people listen because it cost him something to use words. Claire wondered what kind of military man he had been. She had seen the dog tag chain when he bent over Emma. She had also seen the way his gaze found exits, windows, hinges, anything that opened or trapped. When Emma took the bottle, the whole barn seemed to exhale. Her tiny fist opened against the sweatshirt. Wade sat on the straw-covered floor, back against the stall wall, Riley pressed to one side, Ben to the other, Ranger lying across their feet like a living threshold. Claire stood at the stall door longer than necessary. She told herself she was making sure they would not set a lantern too close to Hay, or scare Sunday, the old gray gelding, or wander into the tool room. Truth was uglier and softer. She did not want to leave. The sight of them hurt, but it also warmed a corner of her she had kept cold on purpose.
"You said you can fix pumps," she said. Wade looked up. "Yes, ma'am." "Do not call me ma'am every sentence. Makes me feel like a courthouse." Riley hid a smile. Ben did not hide his. Wade's tired eyes softened. "Claire, then." "Mrs. Donovan to strangers." She surprised herself by adding, "Claire after sunrise, if you earn it." Wade nodded. "Fair." "Pump house is behind the east paddock. It coughs like an old man and throws rust flakes into the trough. Western fence needs new posts."
Tractor needs a belt. Hay elevator has an attitude. Most machines do. You talk to them? Only when they insult me first. Ben giggled into his cracker. Claire felt the sound move through the barn like one match struck in a cold room. Outside, the rain deepened. Claire walked the center aisle checking doors. At the machine shed entrance, Ranger rose suddenly. No bark, no dramatic leap. Just a swift, silent movement that made Wade's shoulders square. The shepherd's nose worked at the bottom of the old door. Claire smelled it then, too, faint under the hay and damp wood. Gasoline. Not strong, not fresh enough to panic over, but present. She frowned. "Generator cans are in the shed," she said. Wade had come up beside her without a sound. That should have irritated her. It did not. "Do you store them against this wall?" "No. They are supposed to be outside in the lean-to." He crouched, touched the threshold, rubbed his fingers together, then smelled them. His face did not harden exactly. It closed. "Anyone been around here today?" he asked. "Only me." "You sure?" "On my own land I notice visitors." Wade accepted that without argument. Ranger gave a low sound again, not fear, not anger, warning shaped into breath. Claire opened the shed door a few inches and shone her flashlight inside. Everything looked normal at first. Rusted mower parts, coils of wire, the old saddle Aaron never had the heart to sell. Then she saw the red gas can sitting beneath the shelf, not where she kept it, its cap loose. A rag lay nearby, damp and sour with fuel. Claire's stomach tightened. Wade reached gently past her and pushed the door wider with his boot instead of his hand. He looked at the rag, then at the window latch above the workbench. It was open. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Rain filled the silence. Claire thought of Owen Price's last visit, his polished smile beneath his white cattleman's hat. 14 days, Claire. After that, sentiment does not matter. She had taken his words as a threat against the banknote. Now she was not so sure. Wade glanced toward the stall where his children were eating in the warm little island Claire had made. His jaw shifted once. When he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that the children could not hear. This was not an accident. Claire hated how much steadiness those 5 words gave her. She also hated needing steadiness from a man who had been on her land less than half an hour. "You do not know that," she said. "No." He looked at Ranger, who still stood between the shed and the children. "But he does." Claire followed his gaze. The dog was not sniffing anymore. He was watching the dark rectangle of the open window. Patient. Certain. Claire shut the shed door and latched it. Wade did not tell her what to do. That helped. Men who wanted to own a room usually started by handing out instructions. Wade seemed to know the difference between danger and authority. "I will move my family out if you want," he said. "Trouble may have followed me." Claire looked back toward the stall. Riley was tearing bread into careful pieces for Ben. Emma slept again, one cheek round against the sweatshirt. Trouble had already lived at Hollow Pine long before Wade Callahan reached the gate. "No," Claire said. "You will sleep in the barn tonight." Wade turned to her. "Claire." The use of her name landed strangely, not familiar, not improper, just human. "You said sunrise," he reminded her. "Sunrise," she said, "and until then, you keep that dog close to your children." Ben called from the stall. "He always does." Claire looked over. The little boy had peanut butter on his chin and the brave expression of someone defending his best friend in court. "Good," she said. "Then he can start earning his keep too," Ranger, as if insulted again, sneezed once and lay down with his head on his paws. Ben whispered, "She is tough, buddy." Claire pretended not to hear. She left them with the yellow light burning above the stall and walked back through the rain to the house. The porch boards were slick. The kitchen smelled of cold coffee and the stew she had stretched too thin. For a moment, she stood with her hand on the doorframe and looked back at the barn. The old light over the entrance glowed through the rain like a small promise too stubborn to go out. Aaron had hung that light the first week they bought Hollow Pine. "So no one has to come home to darkness," he had said, laughing, because the wiring shocked him twice. Claire had left it burning every night since his death, though no one came home anymore. Inside the house felt different. Not full. Not yet. But disturbed in the way soil was disturbed before seed took. Claire locked the door, checked the window latches, and picked up the envelope she had nearly stepped on when she entered. It had been slid under the door while she was at the barn. No stamp. No return address. Her name typed on the front. She opened it with the knife she kept in the drawer beside the sink. A single photograph fell onto the table. Hollow Pine Ranch from above, taken sometime that afternoon. The house. The barn. The cattle pens. Her truck. Her red jacket a tiny spot near the pump house. Someone had watched her from the ridge. Behind the photograph was a printed notice from Price Valley Bank. The auction date had not changed, not yet. But someone had circled the line about failure to maintain insurable property condition. Beneath it, in block letters, was a sentence that made the kitchen colder than the rain outside. Empty barns do not burn by themselves. Claire set both palms on the table. Her first instinct was to fold the paper, hide it, pretend she had not seen it until morning. That was how exhaustion bargained with fear. But from the barn came one short bark sharp enough to cut through the storm. Not frantic. Alert. Claire turned toward the window. The yellow barn light flickered once. Then again. In that pulse of darkness and gold, Claire saw Wade step into the open doorway with Ranger at his side and a flashlight in his hand. He looked toward the ridge, not the house. Claire did not reach for the phone. Reception failed half the time after a rain. She reached for Aaron's rifle, checked that it was secure, and stepped back into the storm. The mud grabbed at her boots as she crossed the yard, the envelope tucked inside her coat like a coal against her ribs. Halfway to the barn, she heard the baby cry, and then Riley's soft voice soothing her. Wade did not move from the doorway. Ranger's hackles lifted a dark ridge against the light. Claire followed their stare into the black slope beyond the north pasture, where for 1 second a distant beam flashed and vanished. Hollow Pine Ranch was no longer simply failing. Someone was trying to make it disappear. Morning came pale and cold over Hollow Pine Ranch, with fog sitting low in the pastures and beads of water trembling from every wire of the east fence. Claire woke from 2 hours of broken sleep to the sound of metal clanking somewhere beyond the house. For one confused breath, she thought Aaron was outside again, cursing gently at the pump while pretending he was not enjoying the fight. Then memory returned plain and heavy. Aaron was gone. The ranch was still in debt. A retired Navy SEAL and 3 children were asleep in her barn, unless they had run off before dawn like some sad dream she had invented in the rain. She pulled on yesterday's jeans, buttoned Aaron's old jacket over her flannel, and stepped onto the porch with her hair still half loose from its braid. The yellow barn light was off, but the barn door stood open. Smoke from a small camp stove curled safely beyond the gravel apron, and beside it, Riley Callahan sat with baby Emma wrapped against her knees, watching her father work on the pump house with the solemn focus of a foreman twice her age. Wade had already removed the rusted intake screen and laid the parts on a feed sack in neat order. Ben crouched nearby, handing him tools with both hands, as if each wrench were a sacred object. Ranger lay where he could see the pump house, the barn, the driveway, and the children all at once. Sunday, the old gray gelding hung his head over the paddock rail and eyed the German shepherd with theatrical suspicion. Ranger ignored him until Sunday snorted. Then the dog lifted his head, gave the horse one calm look, and returned to duty. Ben whispered, "They are becoming friends." Sunday pinned one ear. Claire found herself saying, "That horse has never become friends with anything except grain." Ben considered this. Maybe Ranger smells like grain inside his heart. Wade's hand paused on the pipe fitting. A small laugh escaped him, rusty from disuse, and for a moment the morning was not so cold. Claire should have been irritated that a stranger had taken apart her pump without permission. Instead, she saw the clean way he had arranged the washers, the old screen he had brushed free of mineral scale, the temporary filter he had made from mesh and wire. The trough nearby ran clearer than it had in months. Wade looked up when her shadow crossed the doorway. "It was sucking grit from the lower line," he said. "I shut the power off before I touched it. The motor is tired, but not dead. It needs a gasket, and that belt over there will not last a week." "You always take machines apart before breakfast?" "Only the rude ones." Claire folded her arms. "Did it insult you?" repeatedly. Ben nodded with grave loyalty. It made a coughing noise at him. Claire looked at Wade. "Sunrise came early for you?" "Habit." He wiped his hands on a rag. "And Emma woke at 4. At the mention of her name, the baby gave a soft squeak from Riley's lap. The girl adjusted the blanket with a competence that hurt to watch. A 9-year-old should not know the exact angle at which a baby with a stuffy nose could breathe more easily. Claire walked closer. "You can bring her into the kitchen after chores. It is warmer there." Riley looked to Wade before answering. That single glance told Claire much about the past months. The child had learned not to accept kindness until her father said it was safe. Wade nodded once. "Thank you, Mrs. Donovan," Riley said. Polite, careful, too careful. Claire is fine after sunrise, Claire replied.
Riley's face softened, but only a little, as if hope were a hot cup she did not trust herself to hold.
The work should have moved slowly, with 3 children underfoot. It did not. Wade repaired the pump enough to keep water flowing, braced 2 sagging posts near the west paddock, and fixed the barn latch that had been sticking since Christmas. He moved with efficient restraint, never hurrying in a way that looked panicked, never wasting motion. Claire noticed things she did not want to notice. He never turned his back to the driveway for long. Loud sounds made his fingers stop before the rest of him did. When a truck backfired on the county road, his shoulders tightened so quickly, Ben looked up from a coil of rope and whispered, "It is okay, Daddy." Wade's mouth flickered with shame, and he went back to tying a knot. Claire looked away because dignity mattered most when it was fragile. By noon, she had learned the children's names properly. Riley 9 had her father's blue-gray eyes and her mother's careful handwriting on the labels inside the baby bag. Ben 5 had a cowlick that refused leadership and a habit of asking questions at the exact moment adults hoped for silence. Emma, 3 months, slept in short bursts and woke with a cry that made Wade cross any distance between them without seeming to decide. Their mother, Hannah, had died after complications that Wade described in only 3 words. After Emma came. The words landed and stayed. Claire did not ask for the medical story. She had no appetite for the details of someone else's worst day. Not when his hands still shook every time the baby's breathing changed. Pain did not become truer because people pulled it apart. In the kitchen, Claire warmed soup and found a clean towel for Emma. The room looked embarrassed by company. Mail stacked on the counter, a jar of fence staples near the sugar. Aaron's mug still on the shelf above the sink, not used, not put away. Wade noticed it because he noticed everything, but he did not ask. That restraint earned him more trust than any confession might have. Ben sat at the table and stared at the faded photograph of Aaron beside a prize mare. "Is that your cowboy?" he asked. Riley made a horrified sound. Claire surprised them both by answering, "That was my husband. His name was Aaron." Ben's eyes widened. "Where is he?" Wade said softly, "Ben." Claire set bowls on the table. "He died in a truck accident last year." The little boy looked down at his spoon. "My mom died too." There it was. The blunt bridge children built over grief because no adult had taught them to decorate it. Claire sat slowly. "I am sorry." Ben nodded. "Daddy says sorry does not fix it, but it can sit beside you." Wade looked at his son, and Claire saw that the sentence had cost him before it became Ben's comfort. The afternoon brought a brief break in the clouds, and with it, Owen Price. His black truck rolled up the drive as if it owned the gravel. Claire saw it from the barn and felt the old tightening begin under her ribs. Owen stepped out wearing pressed denim, a wool coat too clean for ranch work, and a white hat that had never met a real storm. He was 52, handsome in the maintained way of men who paid other people to sweat. His smile arrived before the rest of him. "Claire," he called. "Still standing, I see." She walked to meet him before he could reach the barn. Wade was at the far workbench replacing a hinge, but Claire felt his attention shift. Ranger lifted his head. The children went quiet. "Owen," Claire said, "if this is about the note you can mail it, I did, several times. You have a habit of treating deadlines like weather reports." His gaze moved past her to Wade, then to Riley Ben and the baby basket near the stall. "New help, a hired hand, with a nursery." Claire kept her face still. "What do you want?" Owen removed a folded paper from his coat. "To remind you that the bank's patience is not a family heirloom. 14 days. After that, we begin proceedings. Unless, of course, you reconsider my offer. Clean sale. Fair price. You walk away with something instead of nothing. Your idea of fair could starve a wolf, Ben whispered from behind Wade. What's a wolf? Wade murmured. Later. Owen's smile thinned. He had heard. Children on a failing property. Owen said, voice gentle enough for insult. That is a responsibility. Claire stepped closer. Do not use that tone on my land, your land for now. Wade set the hinge down. He did not stride over, he did not puff himself up, he simply came to stand near enough that Claire was no longer alone without making it look as though he had taken her place. Owen studied him. And you are Wade Callahan. Military. Wade said nothing. Owen's eyes dropped to the old dog tag chain visible at Wade's collar. I know men like you. You mistake discipline for judgment. Wade's expression did not change. People usually see what they practice. Claire almost turned to look at him. Almost. Owen chuckled without warmth. Advice, Mr. Callahan. A man with children should avoid attaching himself to sinking property. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice in a way meant for Wade, but not quite hidden from Claire. Before one more accident makes the choice for him. Ranger rose, no bark, just up suddenly, smoothly, the way a shadow might stand. Owen's gaze flicked to the dog. For the first time since he arrived, his smile lost its polish. Wade rested 2 fingers against Ranger's collar. You should leave, Wade said. Calm, not a threat. A weather report of his own. Owen looked at Claire. 14 days, he repeated. And Claire insurance companies get particular about barns fuel unauthorized tenants, all sorts of little things. He climbed back into his truck and turned around slowly, spraying a thin arc of mud near the fence as he left. Claire watched until the taillights vanished beyond the cottonwoods. She was aware of Wade beside her, of Ranger still standing, of the children pretending they had not understood enough to be afraid. The wind moved across the yard and worried the loose edge of the bank notice in her hand. She hated Owen most for how he could make the whole ranch feel smaller after a 5-minute visit. He came last night, Wade said. Claire turned. You do not know that? No, but he knew about the fuel can. He could have guessed. He knew where to press. That was true. Owen always did. Claire folded the paper once, then again, buying time with the motion. You said trouble may have followed you. Maybe it walked in wearing a white hat instead? Wade glanced at the road. Maybe. She disliked that he did not rush to defend himself. It made her want to believe him, and believing people was expensive. Why are you really here, Mr. Callahan? She asked. No one walks 7 miles in the rain with 3 children because one ranch happens to be convenient. Wade looked toward Riley, who was showing Ben how to brush Sunday without startling him. Emma slept in a crate padded with blankets, one tiny hand curled near her face. Ranger sat between them and the driveway. I sold our house in Virginia Beach after Hannah died, he said. Thought I had to. Too many rooms with her missing from them. A man I trusted handled some papers, then money disappeared into fees, delays, promises. I took work where I could. Repairs, security, driving. None of it lasted long, with a baby and 2 kids in tow. He swallowed. I heard about ranch work outside Joseph, from a veteran in Boise. That job was gone when we got there. Truck died on the way back. He looked at Claire then. I saw your barn light from the road. The yellow light. Aaron's stubborn little beacon. Claire looked at it above the barn door, dark now in daylight, but still present. That is why you came? It was on, Wade said simply. Most places were not. Something in Claire's chest shifted, not healed, not even close, but rearranged. She had kept that light burning for a dead man. She had not imagined it might guide the living. "You can stay 3 days," she said. "Work for meals and the stall. If the bank trouble gets worse, you take your children and go before they get caught in it." Wade nodded, but his eyes told her he had filed away the order without promising obedience. "3 days," he said, "and I will fix that tractor." "You saw the tractor?" "Hard to miss. It looks personally offended by gravity." Claire laughed before she could stop herself. The sound startled and delighted Ben and made Riley stare as if grown women on ranches did not laugh often enough to be trusted at it. Wade looked down, smiling faintly. The moment lasted only a breath, but it left warmth behind. Then Ranger turned toward the north pasture and gave one low growl. The air changed. Wade followed the dog's stare. Claire saw nothing at first, only the line of fence, the wet grass, the dark backs of cattle grazing near the ridge. Then a shape moved where no one should have been, just beyond the old service road. Wade did not reach for a weapon. He lifted a hand, palm low, and Ranger stilled. Claire grabbed the binoculars from the tack shelf and focused through the cloudy lenses. A man in a brown coat crouched near the north gate, then slipped behind a stand of willow. When he emerged, he carried something long and thin, maybe a pry bar, maybe fence cutters. Claire lowered the binoculars, her pulse beat in her throat. "That gate leads to the upper pasture," she said. "Best cattle are up there." Wade's face went quiet again, that closed look from the night before. "Get the children inside the barn," he said, then corrected himself because he remembered whose ranch it was. "Please." Claire wanted to snap at him. Instead, she moved. Riley gathered Emma without needing instruction. Ben called Ranger, but the dog did not come. He stayed beside Wade, eyes fixed on the pasture. Claire shut the barn doors halfway and took Aaron's rifle from the locked cabinet, not because she meant to use it, but because out here tools had more than one language. Wade noticed the safe handling and gave one small nod. It bothered her that the nod mattered. They moved together toward the north fence, keeping the barn between the children and the ridge. The rain had softened the ground, and near the gate the mud showed fresh boot prints. One set, maybe two. The chain had been cut clean through. Beyond the gate, the cattle had begun to drift toward the ravine road, drawn by a line of feed pellets scattered in the grass. Claire swore under her breath. Wade knelt, touched the cut chain, and lifted his fingers to Ranger. The shepherd sniffed and sneezed hard, then pulled toward the willow brake. "Peppermint tobacco," Wade said, "and machine oil." Claire remembered Owen's driver, a thin man who chewed gum strong enough to smell across a room. Her anger came cold, not hot. "He wants me to chase them," she said. Wade looked toward the ravine where fog still clung to the low ground. "Yes. And if I do not, then you lose the herd." The truth sat between them, mean and practical. From the barn came Emma's cry, thin but alive, and Ben's voice saying, "Riley, do babies hate barns?" Riley answered, "Only this morning." Claire shut her eyes for 1 second. Aaron had always said ranching was one long argument with weather, debt animals, and the pride of fools. He had not mentioned how grief could make every decision feel like betrayal. If she chased the cattle, she put Wade at risk. If she did not, she might lose the bank payment that could keep Hollow Pine alive another month. Wade stood. "We can bring them back without following the road. I work here, remember, for 3 days. Then I should be useful quickly." Claire studied him. Rain darkened his shoulders. Mud covered his boots. Behind his calm, she saw exhaustion, the kind that did not vanish after sleep, because it had roots. Yet he was ready to step toward trouble for a ranch that was not his, for a woman who had offered him straw and soup and suspicion. Maybe he was foolish. Maybe she was.
No heroics, she said. I have had enough men die trying to prove something. His eyes softened at that just for a moment. No heroics, he agreed.
Just cattle. They worked the herd from the flank, quiet and careful. Wade used Ranger with hand signals so subtle Claire almost missed them. The dog moved like water around the cattle, never snapping, never frightening them into a run. Sunday brought out on a lead, because he still knew the old pasture better than most people knew prayer. Behaved as if he had personally trained the dog and found the results adequate. Claire guided the lead cow with a bucket and low calls. Wade closed the gap near the ravine. Twice she saw him stop himself from taking a direct path because it would expose him on the ridge. He chose patience. That impressed her more than speed. By late afternoon, the cattle were back inside the lower pasture, the cut gate chained, temporarily, with a spare tow line. Claire's gloves were soaked. Wade's cheek was streaked with mud. Ranger had acquired 3 burrs and an expression of deep professional disappointment. Ben, watching from the barn doorway, announced, "Ranger saved the cows." Claire leaned on the fence, breathless. Ranger helped. The dog looked at her. "Fine," she said. "Ranger saved the cows." Ben beamed. Wade's face was Tired as it was warmed at the edges. The warmth did not last. On the broken gate post half hidden beneath the splintered wood, Claire found a business card pinned with a roofing nail. Price Valley Development. Owen's private company, not the bank. On the back, someone had written in blue ink, "You are making this harder than it needs to be." Claire stared at the sentence until the words blurred. Wade came beside her but did not touch the card. "He wants a reaction," he said. "He wants a sale." Same thing to him. Claire pulled the card free. The nail had split the wood around it. Small damage deliberately placed, meant to promise larger damage. That evening, after the children ate and Emma slept in a basket by the stove, Claire stood at the kitchen sink washing bowls, while Wade repaired the broken chain at the table because the rain had returned. Riley dried spoons. Ben fed one unauthorized crust to Ranger and then denied it with peanut butter on his fingers. The house, against Claire's will, made room for them. Boots by the door, a baby blanket over a chair, Ranger's broad head near the pantry, Wade's quiet presence at the table where Aaron used to sit. It should have felt like theft. Instead, it felt dangerous in another way, like a boarded window opened to spring air. Wade finished the chain and set it down. "Claire," he said. She did not turn from the sink. "What? The man at the gate wanted you to run toward the ravine. Not just lose cattle. He wanted you away from the house and barn." She dried her hands slowly. "You think there was something else? I think Ranger smelled fuel last night. I think someone photographed your ranch. I think Owen came today to see who was here. And I think the cut fence was a test." Claire looked toward the window where the barn light glowed through rain. In the reflection, she saw Wade, the children, the dog, and herself, all held inside one square of glass, as if the house had already made a decision none of them were ready to admit. Then headlights swept across the kitchen wall. Not Owen's black truck, a county vehicle. Deputy Travis Keene stepped out into the rain, hat low, shoulders stiff with duty. Claire opened the door before he knocked. "Evening, Claire," he said, then looked past her at Wade. His expression tightened. "I need to speak with Mr. Callahan." Wade stood slowly, careful not to alarm the children. Riley's hand went to Emma's basket. Ranger rose without a sound. Travis removed a folded complaint from inside his coat. "Owen Price says you threatened one of his employees with a weapon this afternoon." Claire felt the day tilt under her feet. From the table, Ben whispered, "Daddy did not." Travis looked at the boy, then away, uncomfortable but still official. "I am going to need everyone to stay calm. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills, and somewhere beyond the barn, a loose piece of metal banged in the wind like someone knocking from the dark. The next morning opened with a hard blue cold that made every puddle wear a skin of ice, though spring light had already begun touching the high shoulders of the Wallowa Mountains. Claire stood in the kitchen before sunrise, one hand wrapped around a mug of coffee gone lukewarm, while Deputy Travis Keene's complaint sat on the table like a dead moth. He had not arrested Wade the night before. Travis was too fair for that, or perhaps too uneasy. He had listened to Claire, listened to Wade, glanced at the children huddled by the stove, then said he would look into it, in the tone of a man who knew looking could cost him. Owen Price had influence in Wallowa County not because people loved him, but because they owed him. Feed store credit, truck loans, notes on land that had been in families longer than the courthouse itself. Influence was not always loud. Sometimes it lived in signatures at the bottom of paper. Wade came in from the barn with Ranger at his heel and Frost on his shoulders. He had slept little. Claire could see it in the gray beneath his eyes and the way he held himself steady by will rather than rest. Emma had been up twice. Ben had dreamed about the truck dying. Riley had pretended not to cry and done a poor job of fooling Ranger, who had climbed halfway into the straw beside her until she wrapped one arm around his neck. Now the children were still asleep in the kitchen's warmth. Riley on the old couch with Emma tucked safely in a basket beside her, Ben curled under a quilt with one hand dangling toward Ranger's flank. The dog had left him only because Wade had asked. Even then, Ranger checked the boy twice before following. "We need to look at the north line in daylight," Wade said. Claire nodded. He leaned one shoulder against the doorframe, careful not to drip on the floor. "You know the land. I know what sabotage smells like." She wanted to dislike that word. Sabotage belonged in news reports and military briefings, not between her flour tin and Aaron's old calendar. But denial had stopped being useful sometime between the loose gas cap and the cut gate. "I need to feed first," she said. "Then we ride." Wade looked toward the couch where Riley's hair had fallen across her face. "I can stay with them." "No, Marlene is coming." He raised an eyebrow. "The diner lady? The diner lady has keys to half the town and gossip from the other half. She can watch 3 children for a morning." "Does she know she can?" "She will when she gets here." Marlene Foster arrived 20 minutes later in a faded red Subaru that sounded like a drawer full of spoons. She wore a purple coat, rubber boots, and the expression of a woman prepared to complain while doing exactly what needed doing. "I brought biscuits," she announced before Claire even opened the door. "And do not look at me like that, Claire Donovan. Children cannot live on your emergency crackers and stubbornness." Her eyes moved to Wade. She took him in from wet boots to dog tag chain, then down to Ranger, who regarded the biscuit tin with intense moral interest. "You must be the new complication." Wade said, "Yes, ma'am." Marlene snorted. "At least he knows." Ben woke at the sound of her voice and whispered, "Are those biscuits?" Ranger's tail moved once. Marlene pointed at both of them. "One each. The dog earns his by not looking at me as if I invented hunger." That small domestic storm steadied the house. Claire left Marlene with formula instructions, which Riley corrected twice in a whisper, and went to saddle Sunday and a younger mare named Juniper. Wade watched Claire work with tack that still bore Aaron's initials. He did not comment. Claire appreciated the silence. People talked too much around grief because they feared what would happen if they left it alone in the room. Out in the pasture, the grass shone wet and bright under the lifting fog. Ranger ranged ahead, nose low, then swung back whenever Wade gave a quiet click of his tongue. The dog moved with purpose, but not drama. Claire had known her share of ranch dogs, good-hearted healers with more enthusiasm than sense. Ranger was different. He seemed to understand that the world held both children and hidden doors. At the cut gate, Wade crouched again. The mud had frozen at the edges of the footprints, preserving them in broken detail. 2 men, he said. One waited near the road, one came in. Claire dismounted and joined him. You can tell that from mud? From the way one set turns back before the gate. Wade stays on the outside foot. He was watching. Watching for me, most likely. He pointed to a shallow mark near the post. Fence cutters rested here, not dropped, rested, calm hands. Claire hated that. She would rather imagine desperate men than calm ones. Desperation could be reasoned with sometimes. Calm cruelty had a schedule. Ranger pulled toward the willow brake, then stopped at a patch of flattened grass. Wade parted the stems. A peppermint gum wrapper lay caught beneath a twig bright green against the mud. Beside it, almost hidden, was a smear of black oil on a stone. Claire did not touch either. Wade photographed them with his phone, then tucked the wrapper into an empty feed receipt envelope using the edge of a twig. Evidence? She asked. Habit, seal habit. He glanced up. The morning light put silver in the short hair at his temples. Survival habit. That answer opened a door and shut it at once. They followed the line west, where the fence climbed toward a ridge of dark pine and basalt. Claire rode ahead where the path narrowed. She had not realized how much she missed having someone competent behind her. Not someone to rescue her. That thought irritated her. Rescue was a word people used when they wanted women to be grateful for being underestimated. No, what she missed was a second pair of eyes. Aaron had been that. He could read a pasture from a porch, tell a storm by the smell of the dust, hear a lame step in a herd before the horse even dipped its head. Since his death, Claire had become 2 people out of necessity, but 2 jobs inside one body did not make one less lonely. Wade did not fill Aaron's place. Nothing did. But he occupied his own space cleanly, without trying to push into hers. There, Wade said. Ranger had stopped near an old survey stake, half swallowed by grass. The wood was painted orange, too new to be one of Aaron's markers. Claire slid from the saddle and stared. Beyond the stake, 3 more formed a line toward the creek bottom. I did not put these here. Wade brushed dirt from the base. Survey company. Owen said he had appraisals done from county maps. Looks like someone came on the land. Claire felt heat rise in her face. He cannot survey land he does not own. Wade's expression remained level. He can if he thinks no one will stop him. That sentence settled between them with all the quiet weight of the county's history. Men like Owen did not always break rules loudly. They treated rules as gates built for other people. At the creek they found the second surprise. A metal cap set into the ground near the old spring house, new enough to shine beneath the dirt. Wade knelt. Monitoring well. Claire frowned. For water testing? Maybe. He looked across the pasture toward the road, then toward the ridge. Or soil samples. Claire thought of the aerial photograph the development company card the pressure from the bank. Hollow Pine had water even in dry years. Aaron used to say the ranch sat over an old blessing, a deep, cold vein that kept the grass alive when neighboring fields went brown. She had treated that as romance because Aaron had been fond of giving practical things spiritual names. Now she looked at the capped pipe and wondered what else her husband had known. On the ride back, Wade told her a little more, though not because she asked. Maybe the land loosened him. Maybe the children sleeping safely at the house gave him room to speak. Ranger was not always mine, he said. The dog trotted ahead, ears turning. He worked with a handler named Luis before he worked with me. Best man I knew at making fear feel ordinary. Ranger used to steal his gloves. Used to? Wade's hands tightened on the reins, then eased. Luis did not come home from our last deployment. Ranger did. After I left the teams, the paperwork got tangled. I fought to adopt him. Hannah said I only wanted him because he understood silence.
Was she right?
Claire asked. Wade looked at the dog. Often. Claire considered that.
Aaron said I married the ranch first and him second. Was he right? Often? The exchange was so dry, so soft around the edges that both of them smiled. Then the smile faded, not from awkwardness, but from respect. The dead had a way of entering conversations when their names were spoken in sunlight. Claire did not mind. For once, Aaron did not feel like a closed room. He felt like someone walking the fence line a little ahead of them, pointing out what she had missed.
Back at the ranch house, Marlene had transformed the kitchen into controlled disorder. Riley was rolling biscuit dough with too much flour. Ben was telling Emma a story about a horse who refused to pay taxes. Ranger took one look at the biscuit tray and forgot for half a second every oath he had ever made to duty. Marlene swatted the air near his nose with a towel. "Do not you dare decorate it or not." Wade removed his hat. "Ma'am, he has no confirmed decorations. Then he is lying with his face." Ben laughed so hard he hiccuped. The sound made Claire pause in the doorway. Her house had not held this much life since before Aaron's funeral. It was almost too much, too bright, too dangerous. Marlene saw something in Claire's face and followed her outside after breakfast. The two women stood by the porch rail while Wade helped Riley carry dishes. "You are thinking of sending them away," Marlene said. Claire stared toward the ridge. "I am thinking I should never have opened the gate." "That is not the same thing. Owen is escalating. Owen has been escalating for years. You just stopped pretending it was weather." Claire looked at her. Marlene's face powdered and lined and stubborn softened. "Your mother used to say Hollow Pine was the kind of place that tested whether people meant their prayers." Claire swallowed. "My mother also said you burned coffee. She was correct, but that is not relevant." Claire almost smiled, then remembered the survey stakes. She told Marlene what they had found. The older woman's mouth pressed thin. "My nephew works part-time at the county office," Marlene said. "He mentioned a private inquiry about water rights near your place. I did not think much of it." "Why did you not tell me?" The question came sharper than Claire intended. Marlene flinched, then lifted her chin. "Because half this town owes Owen money and the other half eats at my diner." "I have been scared, Claire. That is not noble, but it is true." The honesty took some of Claire's anger away and replaced it with tired sadness. Fear had made cowards out of better people than Marlene. It had nearly made one of Claire. That afternoon, Wade repaired the tractor belt with a temporary fix that involved a salvaged part, patience, and a conversation with the engine Claire was glad no children overheard. Claire worked beside him more than she meant to. She showed him where Aaron kept spare bolts in coffee cans labeled by size and mood. Wade found that funny. "Mood?" he asked. Aaron believed some bolts were cooperative and some were raised poorly. He was not wrong. They fell into a rhythm. She named the ranch's quirks. He listened. He suggested repairs. She weighed cost. Ranger patrolled. The children drifted between chores and the kitchen under Marlene's watch. For a few hours, Owen existed only as a problem waiting beyond the fence. Near dusk, Travis returned. He looked worse in daylight, with tired lines around his mouth and dried mud on his cruiser tires. He apologized to Wade for the complaint, but stopped short of dismissing it entirely. "I know Price's man is lying about some of it," he said, "but I need more than my gut." Wade handed him the envelope with the gum wrapper and photos of the survey stakes. Travis studied them, jaw working. "You realize if I push this, Owen will say I am harassing legitimate business activity." Claire crossed her arms. Was the business activity legitimate? Travis gave her a look.
No. Then maybe let him say it. Travis sighed. You always did have Aaron's talent for making a man feel smaller than his excuses. Claire looked away before the compliment could hurt. Travis promised to ask questions quietly. That was something, though not enough. As he left, Riley came to the porch holding Emma. Are we in trouble? She asked. Wade turned, and Claire saw him wrestle with the father's old enemy. How much truth could a child carry without breaking? Before he answered. Claire knelt so she was level with the girl. There are people trying to scare me into selling this ranch, she said. Your dad is helping me find out why. That means we have to be careful. It does not mean you did anything wrong. Riley's eyes filled, but no tears fell. When grown-ups say careful, sometimes they mean pack. Claire's throat tightened. Wade looked as if the words had gone through him. Claire said, Tonight it means we keep the lights on and eat Marlene's biscuits before Ranger gets them. The dog, hearing his name, looked deeply innocent. Ben shouted from inside, He already got half! Marlene yelled, Benjamin Callahan, betrayal is unbecoming! For one precious moment, fear loosened its grip. They ate at the kitchen table with the bank notice shoved under a seed catalog. Wade fed Emma while Riley tried not to watch every swallow. Claire saw the girl's vigilance and quietly set a second jar of formula where she could see it. Riley touched the jar once a small, grateful tap, then went back to her soup. After supper, Claire stepped outside to check the barn light. Wade joined her with Ranger. The sky had cleared. Stars gathered in cold clusters above the black pines. From the house came Marlene's voice singing something old and church-like to Emma. Claire hugged Aaron's jacket around herself. I used to think if I worked hard enough, the ranch would forgive me for not being him, she said. Wade did not answer too quickly. Did it? No. She looked toward the pastures. It just kept needing things. Children do that too, he said. She turned. Forgive, need. A quiet passed between them, not empty, not easy. Ranger leaned his shoulder against Claire's leg. She looked down in surprise. Is he allowed to do that? Wade's mouth lifted. He has his own policy. The moment ended when the barn light flickered. Once, twice. Then the whole yard went black. Emma cried from inside the house, startled by the sudden dark. Sunday kicked a stall door. Ranger moved before Wade spoke, body low, heading not toward the barn, but toward the old machine shed. Wade took one step after him, then stopped and looked at Claire. She was already moving, flashlight in hand, heart hammering. The beam cut across the shed wall and caught a fresh set of muddy boot prints beneath the window. On the sill rested a small folded paper weighted by a stone. Claire unfolded it with fingers gone cold. No typed notice this time. Just 6 words written in neat blue ink, sell before the children pay too. Wind pressed against hollow pine before dawn, dry and restless, sliding under doors and worrying the loose edges of tin until the barn muttered in its sleep. Claire had not slept much. The note from the machine shed lay sealed in a plastic bag on the kitchen counter, and every time she passed it, she felt the same cold anger bloom behind her ribs. Sell before the children pay too. It was the kind of sentence meant to do more than frighten. It was meant to poison kindness. It wanted Claire to look at Wade's children and see liability instead of life. That, more than the cut fence or the fuel rag, told her something about Owen Price. He did not only want the ranch. He wanted her to participate in losing it. He wanted her to close the gate herself. She found Wade in the barn aisle, sitting on an overturned bucket with Emma asleep against his chest. Ranger lay across the open stall entrance facing the door. Riley and Ben were curled in blankets behind him, safe in the little territory the dog had claimed with his body. The sight stopped Claire at the threshold.
Wade's head was tipped back against the stall wall, eyes open, one hand cupping the baby's back. He looked less like a soldier than a man waiting out a storm no one else could see. "You should sleep," Claire whispered. He looked at her without surprise. "So should you. Ranch women sleep after the bank is paid. Fathers sleep after everyone breathes evenly." Emma made a soft snuffling noise, as if objecting to being used in adult philosophy. Claire stepped closer. "She sounds better. Warm room helped. Formula helped." He hesitated. "You helped." Claire looked away first. By breakfast, the ranch had gathered itself into motion. Marlene arrived with coffee strong enough to remove paint and a sack of groceries she claimed were extras from the diner, though Claire recognized store labels from a fresh trip. Riley arranged Emma's bottles in a careful row. Ben drew a picture of Ranger wearing a sheriff badge, which Marlene declared accurate and Ranger accepted with dignity. Wade and Claire went over the day in low voices by the sink. They needed to check the upper pasture, move the cattle closer, repair the broken gate properly, and find out whether the survey stakes continued past the creek. Travis had promised to come by after speaking with the county office. Owen would hear about that. Owen heard about everything. "We do not chase every shadow," Wade said. "That is how people get tired and make mistakes." Claire bristled. "I have kept this ranch alive, tired." "I know." His calm agreement disarmed her. "But whoever is doing this wants you reacting, so we pick the work that protects the ranch and the kids. The kids are not your only concern here." "No," he said and met her eyes. "They are not." The words were quiet, but they had weight. Claire turned back to the sink before he could see too much of what they did to her. They rode north mid-morning this time, with Eli Mercer trailing behind on a chestnut mare that had once belonged to Aaron. Eli had arrived just after breakfast, hat in hand, shame in his posture. He was 29, lean, with sandy hair and the look of a man who had rehearsed an apology badly. "I heard about the cut fence," he said, "and the kids." Claire nearly shut the door. Eli had left 6 months earlier, saying he could not work for promises and sympathy. He had not been wrong. That was what made it sting. "I cannot pay you," she said. "I know," he swallowed. "I can help today." Wade had watched from the porch, saying nothing. Claire wanted to reject the offer for pride's sake. Then she thought of the cattle, the stakes, the children, the way stubbornness could masquerade as strength. "Saddle Juniper," she said, "and do not make me regret being practical." The upper pasture rolled into a shallow valley where the grass grew thick near the creek and basalt stones rose like old teeth from the earth. Ranger ranged ahead, nose working. Sunday carried Claire with the weary patience of a horse who believed humans made simple routes complicated. Eli rode behind, Wade, glancing often at the former SEAL with curiosity he tried to hide. "You really military?" Eli asked after half an hour. Wade said, "Used to be." "What kind?" "The kind that is used to be." Claire coughed into her glove to cover a smile. Eli took the hint and studied the fence line with new devotion. They found the next problem near a low stand of pines. Someone had loosened 3 posts rather than cutting wire. From a distance, the fence looked intact. Up close, one hard push from spooked cattle would send it down. Wade crouched, then motioned Eli over. "See the soil?" he asked. Eli nodded slowly. "Dug out and pressed back, done fast, but not careless." Claire watched Wade teach without making Eli feel stupid. It was a rare gift. Aaron had possessed it too. Some men made knowledge a ladder. Others made it a club. Wade seemed to prefer ladders, though she suspected he had used clubs when life demanded. As they repaired the posts, Ranger disappeared into the pines. Wade noticed within seconds. He gave one soft whistle.
No response. A second later, the shepherd barked once sharp but controlled. Wade moved toward the sound, Claire behind him, Eli following with a coil of wire. In a small clearing, they found a feed sack hidden beneath branches. It had been opened and sprinkled with grain mixed with salt, the same trick used to draw cattle toward the ravine. Beside it lay a torn corner from a shipping label. Claire saw only partial letters. Wade photographed it. Eli leaned in. That looks like Price Valley Supply. Claire looked at him. You sure? I unloaded sacks there last winter. They use green print. He flushed. Before I quit here, I mean. Claire did not soften the truth by pretending it had not heard. Then you can tell Travis. They rode back with the feed sack tied behind Eli's saddle. The tension among them was not quite trust, but it had the beginning of usefulness. Halfway down the slope, Wade pulled up. Ranger had stopped at the edge of the service road, body stiff. Below them, two men stood by a dark pickup near the old bridge. One smoked or chewed something that made him spit into the gravel. Claire could not see his face clearly, but the posture rang a bell from town. Wade lifted the binoculars. They are waiting, he said. For us. For someone to come down the road. Eli shifted in his saddle. That is Mitch Doyle. Works odd jobs for Owen. Claire tasted metal in her mouth. If they are waiting, we go around. Wade handed back the binoculars. Yes. Going around meant leading the horses through a narrow timber path Aaron had once used during a flood. Claire had not taken it since his death. The trail dipped through wet pine needles and past a mossy rock where Aaron had carved their initials small enough that only they knew to look. She saw them as Sunday picked his way down and nearly lost her breath. C, D, and A, D. Inside a crooked heart Aaron had insisted was artistically rustic. Wade, riding behind, saw her stop. He did not ask. He simply waited. Eli pretended to adjust his stirrup. Ranger sniffed the rock, then sneezed. The absurdity of it saved Claire from crying. He is unimpressed by romance, she said. Wade looked at Ranger. He finds most human rituals inefficient. And biscuits essential. At the ranch, Travis was waiting by the porch with his hat in his hands and a look that told Claire the county office had not been helpful. Marlene stood near him with Riley and Ben behind her, both children peering around her coat. Emma slept in the basket on the porch swing, bundled like a loaf of bread. Travis examined the feed sack, the photos, the gum wrapper, and the note. This is adding up, he said, but not fast enough for a warrant. Claire laughed once, without humor. What would be fast enough? Owen signing his name on a threat and bringing pie, Marlene said. His pie would be store-bought. Travis gave her a tired look. Marlene. What? We are all thinking it. Wade asked about the water right inquiry. Travis looked away toward the fields. There was one. A private development group asked about groundwater capacity and easement access. Price Valley Development is connected but through shell companies. I can prove connection, not intent. Aaron knew, Claire said. The words came from somewhere low. Travis turned back. Maybe. Do not maybe me. Aaron was looking at maps before he died. He kept saying the banknote did not make sense. He said Owen wanted something under the grass. Travis's face changed. He had been Aaron's friend once before grief and duty made their conversations awkward. Claire, the accident report was clean. Clean reports can still miss mud. No one answered. Wind moved across the yard. Sunday shook his mane as if impatient with human institutions. Wade crouched near Ben, who had been staring at the deputy's badge. You okay? Wade asked. Ben looked at Travis. Can you arrest bad guys if they smile? Travis blinked.
Marlene made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a prayer. Travis knelt awkwardly.
Yes, smiling does not help them.
Ben nodded, satisfied.
Good, because Mr. Price smiles mean.
Travis stood slowly.
Out of the mouths,
Marlene murmured. That evening, the house became a planning room without anyone officially naming it so. Claire spread Aaron's old maps across the kitchen table. Wade marked the locations of the survey stakes and damaged fence. Travis added a county road overlay from his folder. Eli pointed out where Price Valley supply trucks had been seen near the ridge. Riley sat at the far end of the table, rocking Emma with one foot, pretending to read a horse magazine while listening to every word. Ben fell asleep under the table with one hand on Ranger's paw. Marlene made sandwiches no one admitted they needed. The map filled with pencil circles. The circles formed a rough path from the service road to the spring house and on toward the ridge beyond the north pasture.
It looks like access, Wade said.
For what? Claire asked, though she already knew. Travis tapped the map. Small runway, maybe, or private airstrip expansion. The terrain here is flatter than most of the valley. With water rights and road easement, it becomes valuable. Valuable enough to burn me out? Valuable enough for Owen to think he can scare you out before anyone asks questions. Claire looked at Aaron's handwriting along the map edge. Check old spring flow after thaw. He had written that 2 weeks before he died. Her grief, usually a stone, shifted into something with edges. He was not careless, she said. Aaron did not just miss a turn in good weather. Travis looked pained. Claire, Wade spoke before Travis could retreat into procedure. We do not have to prove everything tonight. We protect what we have and find what Aaron left. Find what Aaron left. The phrase echoed. Claire had packed most of Aaron's office into the storage room because she could not bear the shape of his empty chair. Boxes of receipts, notebooks, old vet bills, seed catalogs, water test forms. She had called it clutter. Now it might be a trail. After the children were moved to the living room and Marlene took Emma, Claire opened the storage room door for the first time in months. Dust rose. Wade stood behind her, but outside the threshold, waiting for permission without making it obvious. She appreciated that more than she could say. Come on, she said. If you see a box labeled bolts with attitude, do not ask. They searched for an hour. Claire found tax records, calving notes, photographs she was not ready to see, Aaron's handwriting everywhere, like little taps on her shoulder. Wade worked carefully, setting personal items aside without reading them. In a drawer beneath old tractor manuals, Claire found a small spiral notebook she did not recognize. Inside were dates, license plate numbers, initials, and measurements from the spring house. The last page held one sentence. If something happens to ask Marlene about the man with the peppermint gum. Claire sat back on her heels. Wade read the sentence once. Marlene, he said softly. In the living room, Marlene was singing Emma to sleep, her voice old and sweet over the low rumble of the heater. Claire carried the notebook in both hands. The older woman stopped singing when she saw her face. What is it? Claire held out the page. Marlene's cheeks lost color. For a moment, she looked every one of her 67 years and then older. I saw him, she whispered. The week before Aaron died. At the diner with Owen. I told Aaron because the man kept asking about your North Road. Aaron said he would handle it. Her eyes filled. I should have told you after the accident, but Owen's loan on the diner was due and I was afraid. Claire felt the room tilt, but Wade's voice came quiet from behind her. Fear is what Owen has been using. That makes your memory important, not useless. Marlene pressed a hand to her mouth. Riley, awake on the couch, watched the adults with wide eyes. Claire could not comfort everyone, not at once. So she did the only thing she could,
She sat beside Marlene and took her hand. It was a practical hand, warm and flower rough. "Tell me everything," Claire said. Marlene nodded, crying silently now, and began with the smell of peppermint gum and the way Owen had stopped smiling when Aaron walked into the diner. Outside, night settled over Hollow Pine. The barn light glowed steadily. For the first time in months, Claire felt the outline of a fight she might actually win. Not alone. That part still frightened her. It frightened her more than Owen, maybe because accepting help meant admitting the gate had opened both ways. Wade stood by the window with Ranger. The dog leaned against his leg, ears forward. Then Ranger lifted his head toward the drive. A vehicle was coming, fast, no headlights, gravel snapping beneath tires. Wade turned from the window. "Get the children away from the front room," he said. Claire gathered Riley with one arm and reached for Emma with the other. Travis moved toward the door. Before anyone reached it, the vehicle stopped outside, and a man's voice shouted through the dark, panicked and breathless. "Deputy Keene! It is Price's men! They are moving cattle tonight!" The man at the door was Eli Mercer, though for one wild second Claire did not recognize him beneath the mud and fear. He had ridden back toward his trailer after supper to check on his own place, and had seen 2 trucks without headlights turning off the county road toward the Old North access. Now he stood on Claire's porch with rainwater dripping from the brim of his hat, breath steaming, eyes fixed on Travis as if the deputy alone could stop the night from becoming worse. "They had panels loaded," Eli said. "Portable ones, like they mean to funnel the herd." Travis's jaw tightened. "How many men?" "4 that I saw, maybe more. Mitch Doyle driving." Claire looked toward the sleeping children, then at Wade. Ranger stood between the living room and the front door, bodies still waiting for the shape of the decision. The safe thing would have been to stay inside, call for backup, and hope the cattle were still there when the sun rose. Everyone in the room knew it. Everyone also knew hope did not hold gates shut. Claire's best pregnant cows were in the north pasture. If they were driven hard through the ravine or loaded in the dark, she might lose not only animals, but the one spring income that could slow the bank. Owen understood pressure. He knew how to place his thumb where it hurt. Travis went to his radio, but the storm and the ridge made the signal break into static. He swore under his breath, then caught himself when Ben appeared in the hallway, rubbing one eye. "Are bad guys smiling again?" the boy asked. Marlene scooped him up before anyone answered. "No, sweetheart. Tonight they are being extremely poor neighbors." Wade crossed to Ben and crouched. "I need you to do something important." Ben's face grew solemn at once. "With Ranger? Ranger is coming with me." That frightened him more than the trucks. Wade saw it and placed a hand gently on his son's shoulder. "Your job is to stay with Riley, Emma, and Miss Marlene. If Emma cries, you tell her Ranger is working and will be back." Ben's chin trembled. "What if he gets lost?" Wade's eyes flicked once toward the window, toward the dark pastures, toward all the places men and dogs and fathers could disappear. Then he said, "He knows the way to people who love him." Claire looked away because the sentence went through the room like a prayer that had forgotten it was one. They did not ride straight into the north pasture. Wade refused that before anyone could suggest it. "No confrontation in the dark," he said. "We gather evidence, slow them down if we can do it safely, and let Travis be law enforcement." Travis gave him a look that was half gratitude, half embarrassment. "That badge does still mean something." "Then we make sure it is visible," Wade replied. Claire appreciated the phrasing. He did not make Travis defend himself. He gave the man room to stand taller. They took 2 ranch trucks' lights off until the service road, then low beams angled down. Claire drove the lead truck with Wade beside her and Ranger in the back seat pressed low but alert. Travis and Eli followed. The rifle stayed locked behind the seat. Wade noticed and nodded. "Good. I am not going out there to scare anyone," Claire said. "I am going to get my cattle." Both can be true if fear starts making choices.
The road to the north pasture climbed through timber slick with clay. Rain had become mist, but the air tasted electric. Claire knew every bend, every washout, every place Aaron used to complain the county forgot existed. Wade watched the darkness, not tense exactly, but gathered. The truck smelled of wet wool, old leather, and the faint baby powder that had clung to his jacket. Claire felt the absurd intimacy of that smell in the middle of crisis. Hannah liked ranches, she asked suddenly, because fear sometimes made people speak sideways. Wade kept his eyes on the road. She liked horses. She said they had better manners than most seals. She was probably right, usually. The word returned from the day before and sat between them gently. They stopped half a mile from the pasture and went on foot along the old irrigation track. Ranger moved ahead with Wade's hand signals. Claire carried a flashlight with red film over the lens. Travis had his body camera on and his radio raised for any moment of signal. Eli, to his credit, did not chatter. From the ridge, they saw the trucks below dark shapes near the cattle. Men moved with panels, trying to create a temporary chute toward the ravine road. There was no dramatic shouting, no wild chase, just efficient theft dressed as ranch work. That made Claire angrier than noise would have. The cattle shifted uneasily, their breath pale in the cold. Wade leaned close enough to speak near Claire's ear. If they start driving them open the lower swing gate from here, he pointed to a fence line that cut across the slope. Cattle will choose the familiar lane back toward your barn if it looks open. That gate sticks. How badly? Like it has a grudge. He almost smiled. Can you reach it? I built the grudge. She moved before he could argue, staying low along the fence. Her boots slipped twice, her gloves soaked through. At the gate she found the chain wrapped wrong, likely by Owen's men to keep the cattle from turning back. Her fingers worked in the cold. The metal resisted. For one breath, panic rose sharp and useless. Then she heard Aaron's voice in memory, not mystical, not grand, just impatient and loving. Quit asking metal for permission, Claire. She braced one boot against the post and pulled. The chain came free with a jerk that stung her palm. Below, Ranger gave one controlled bark from the trees, then another from a different position. The cattle turned their heads, confused but not panicked. Wade had sent the dog in a wide arc, not to attack, not to frighten, but to redirect attention. Travis stepped into a place where his badge caught the truck lights and shouted, "Sheriff's Department, stop where you are!" The men froze. One moved as if to run, then saw Eli with a phone recording from the ridge. Claire opened the swing gate wide. The lead cow, Old Hazel, recognized the lane and lumbered toward it. Cattle followed cattle because cattle trusted habit more than argument. Within minutes, the herd was drifting away from the panels and back toward Hollow Pine. Mitch Doyle cursed loudly enough for the hillside to hear, then lifted both hands when Travis approached. The others tried to claim they were helping gather loose cattle. Travis asked who had requested help. No one answered clearly. Wade stayed back with Claire Ranger beside him because the night did not need another man looming in its center. That restraint mattered. Claire saw Travis notice it too. Eli kept filming. One truck had Price Valley Development paperwork on the dashboard, visible through the windshield. Travis photographed it along with the panels and the altered gate chain. He did not arrest them, not yet. He issued citations, gathered names, and told them to leave the property. The law moved slower than justice, in Claire's opinion, but tonight it moved. On the way back, the herd ahead of them like a dark river. Claire's hands began to shake. Not from cold. She pulled the truck to the side near the old bridge and got out before Wade could ask if she was all right. The answer was no and yes, and none of his business, and very much his business all at once. She stood under the dripping pines, breathing hard. Wade came around the truck but stopped several feet away. Ranger went to Claire without waiting for permission and leaned against her leg again, solid and warm. She put one hand on the dog's head. He does this to everyone, only people he thinks are carrying too much. Nosy dog. Decorated nosy dog, according to Marlene. Claire laughed, then covered her face because the laugh broke and almost became something else.
Wade did not touch her.
That was the mercy. He stood near enough that she was not alone, far enough that she did not have to defend herself. I keep thinking I am one mistake away from proving them right, she said through her hands. Owen, the bank, everyone who says Aaron was the rancher and I am just the widow wearing his coat. Wade's voice came quiet. You opened the right gate in the dark. That is not enough. Tonight it was. She lowered her hands. Rain clung to his lashes. He looked exhausted beyond words. You talk like a man trying to convince himself too. He did not deny it. Most advice is autobiographical. When they reached the ranch, Marlene met them at the porch with a blanket around her shoulders and a wooden spoon in her hand as if prepared to discipline intruders or soup. Riley stood behind her, holding Emma. Ben ran straight to Ranger and wrapped both arms around his neck. The dog endured the embrace with noble suffering, then licked peanut butter from the boy's sleeve. You came back, Ben whispered. Told you, Wade said, but his voice roughened. Claire saw Riley watching him, saw the girl's shoulders finally drop. Children did not need long speeches about safety. They needed proof repeated until their bodies believed it. Travis came in last, bringing cold air and the smell of wet gravel. He set his hat on the table and accepted coffee from Marlene without protest. I have enough to open a formal investigation, he said. Property tampering, attempted livestock theft, trespass. I still need something that ties Price directly. Claire placed Aaron's notebook on the table. Then we find it. Travis looked from the notebook to Marlene. The older woman nodded. I will give a statement. The words cost her.
Claire heard it. So did everyone else.
Marlene straightened. And if Owen calls my loan, he can eat my meatloaf cold for the rest of his miserable days. Ben whispered to Riley, That sounds bad. Riley whispered back, It is probably very bad. The adults laughed, and laughter after fear tasted different, almost holy.
The next 2 days settled into a strange pattern of vigilance and chores.
Wade repaired the west fence with Eli. Claire inventoried cattle and checked every gate twice. Travis interviewed neighbors quietly. Marlene began listening at the diner with the focused sweetness of a woman offering pie while collecting evidence. Riley helped bottle feed a weak calf and named it Button, despite Claire's warning not to name animals too quickly. Ben followed Sunday around with a brush, informing the horse that taxes were unfair, but hay was not free. Emma gained color in the cheeks. Ranger patrolled so thoroughly that even the barn cats seemed to file reports.
In those ordinary hours, the ranch changed. Not dramatically.
No violins from the sky, just little alterations. Wade's jacket on the porch peg beside Aaron's old raincoat. Riley's careful handwriting on a chore list Claire had not asked her to make. Ben's boots drying near the stove. Emma's blanket across the back of the rocking chair. Ranger's habit of sleeping with his head toward the door but one paw touching the rug where the children played. Claire kept telling herself 3 days had passed, and she should send them on before attachment became another debt. But each time she opened her mouth, some practical need interrupted. The tractor, the calf, the pending storm. The truth was less practical. The house had started making a place for them, and Claire did not know how to evict hope politely.
On the 4th morning, Wade found her at the spring house studying Aaron's notebook.
Sunlight cut through the pine branches in narrow gold stripes. You are thinking too loudly, he said. That a seal skill? Father skill.
She handed him the notebook. Aaron wrote a license plate here. Travis traced it to a survey company in Bend. They deny sending anyone, but the plate belongs to a truck reported sold for parts 2 years ago. Wade frowned. Ghost plate. Owen Shell Company filed environmental interest paperwork the same week. You need records. I need the bank to stop pretending my note is clean. Wade looked toward the house where Riley was hanging baby clothes on a line under Marlene's supervision. Then we go through every loan document Aaron kept. Claire sighed. That sounds miserable. Most important things hide in miserable paperwork. They spent the afternoon in Aaron's office with boxes stacked around them. Claire expected pain, and got it, but not alone. Wade read dates aloud. Claire compared payment amounts. Riley, with permission, sorted receipts by year because order comforted her. Ben stamped old envelopes with a broken office stamp until Marlene declared him deputy of unnecessary paperwork. It was almost peaceful. Then Claire found the copy of the loan modification Owen had pushed after Aaron's death. Her signature was there. So was a second acknowledgement she did not remember signing. The date was the day after Aaron's funeral. Her stomach turned. Wade studied it. This clause lets them accelerate the auction if they declare property neglect. I did not agree to that. Did you sign anything that day? I signed flowers, food deliveries, insurance forms. People kept handing me pens. Her voice went flat. He used my grief as a desk. Wade's face changed, not with loud anger, but with something colder. Travis needs this. Claire copied the papers while Wade photographed them. Marlene called the deputy. Riley took Emma outside before the room could fill with adult fear. Claire sat in Aaron's chair for the first time since the funeral. The leather creaked beneath her. On the desk under a blotter, she noticed a slit in the paper backing. She lifted it and found a small USB drive taped underneath, with Aaron's handwriting on the tape. See, if I am wrong, forgive me. If I am right, do not let him smile through it. Claire held the drive as if it were a bone from a grave. Wade stood very still. Do you have a laptop? He asked. Old one. Her voice hardly sounded like hers. They set it up on the kitchen table while Marlene hovered and pretended not to. Travis arrived before the files finished loading. The first folder held photographs of survey stakes water tests and Owen meeting with men Claire did not know. The second held scanned documents with highlighted signatures. The third held a short audio file. Claire did not want to press play. Wade did not offer to do it for her. He waited until she nodded. Aaron's voice filled the kitchen, thin from the old recording, but unmistakable. If this is needed, then I failed to get ahead of him, he said. Claire covered her mouth. The recording continued. Aaron described pressure from Owen, irregular loan terms, private interest in groundwater, and a meeting he planned to have with a state investigator. He did not accuse anyone of harming him. He did not dramatize. He sounded like Aaron, practical and wry and worried about Claire more than himself. Near the end, he said, Claire, if you are hearing this, I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I thought protecting you meant carrying it quiet. I was wrong about that. You always hated when I fixed gates without telling you which hinge was bad. Claire broke then, not loudly. Not in a way a camera would love, but with a small bent sound that made Riley cry in the yard without knowing why. Wade stood beside her, one hand on the back of the chair, not touching, until Claire reached for him. She gripped his sleeve like rope. Ranger pressed against her knee. Marlene wept openly. Travis looked away, eyes wet, duty losing its fight with friendship. The recording ended with Aaron's last words. Keep the barn light on. Somebody good may need it one night. No one spoke for a long time. Then Travis closed the laptop carefully. This changes everything, he said. Claire wiped her face. Then change it. Travis nodded. I will take it to the sheriff and the state investigator, tonight. Wade looked toward the window. Dusk had thickened. Copy it first. Already doing it, Riley said from the doorway, surprising them all. She held up the spare drive Wade had shown her how to use earlier. Her face was pale, but determined.
Dad says important things need backups.
Wade stared at his daughter with grief and pride tangled together. Yes, he said softly. They do.
But important things also drew attention. An hour after Travis left with the evidence, his cruiser lights flashed briefly at the far bend of the county road, then vanished. At first, Claire thought he had turned behind the ridge. Then Wade's phone buzzed with a call from Eli, who had gone to close the lower gate. Claire? Eli said, voice typed through the speaker. Deputy's cruiser is off the road by Miller's Ditch. I can see steam. He is moving, but he needs help. Claire reached for her coat. Wade was already lifting Emma into Riley's arms and giving instructions in a calm voice that made panic line up and wait. Ranger stood, ears forward, eyes bright. Outside the barn, light glowed against the falling dark, and Claire understood with a terrible clarity that Owen had stopped trying to scare them away. Now he was trying to stop the truth from leaving. Rain returned in needles fine and cold as Claire and Wade drove toward Miller's Ditch with Ranger braced in the back seat and the heater blowing air that smelled faintly of dust. The road unrolled through black timber, each curve familiar enough to make the wrongness worse. Claire had driven this route in every weather, hauling feed, chasing a loose calf, bringing Aaron home late from the diner after he had promised Marlene he could fix her freezer, and then spent 3 hours making it worse before making it better. Tonight the road seemed narrower. The pines leaned close. Wade sat beside her with one hand on the dashboard, not because he feared her driving, but because his body knew sudden stops in old ways. Neither of them spoke until Ranger gave a low sound from the back.
He smells something,
Claire asked. Maybe. Wade lowered the window a few inches. Wet air rushed in. Burnt rubber. Coolant. From the cruiser? Could be. His voice stayed even. That steadiness was beginning to feel less like distance and more like a lantern of its own something, held low and careful so others could see where to put their feet. Claire did not like needing it. She needed it anyway. At the bend near Miller's Ditch, Eli stood in the road, waving a flashlight. Travis's cruiser sat nose down in the shallow ditch, one rear wheel lifted, steam rising from the hood. The damage looked frightening in the headlights, but not graphic. Bent metal, mud, a spider web of cracked safety glass. Travis was sitting on the bank with Eli's coat around his shoulders, awake and angry enough to be a good sign. I am fine, Travis said before Claire reached him. That is rarely true when a man says it that fast, Claire replied. Wade knelt at a respectful distance. Any dizziness? Trouble breathing? Pain in your neck? Travis glared. You a doctor too? No, just annoying, Eli said. He was more annoying before you got here. Tried to stand up twice. Travis muttered something about everyone becoming deputies. Claire crouched in front of him. There was a shallow cut near his eyebrow and mud on one sleeve, but he seemed steady. Wade checked him without making a performance of it, then advised an ambulance. Travis resisted until Claire said, If you make me tell Marlene you refused medical help, I will enjoy watching what happens. Travis sighed. Call it in. The radio in the cruiser had been damaged, but Wade got a signal from a rise above the ditch. While they waited for the ambulance, Ranger searched the roadside with Wade. Claire stayed near Travis, wrapping him in another blanket from her truck. What happened? She asked. Travis looked toward the bend. Truck came up behind me too fast. No lights until the last second. I moved right to avoid contact, hit the soft shoulder, lost the rear. They did not stop. Did you see who? Dark truck. Could be half the county. He touched his coat, suddenly alert. The drive. Claire's stomach dropped. The evidence. Travis tried to stand. It was in my inside pocket. Wade turned from the roadside. It still is. He held up a sealed plastic sleeve. Found it under your seat. Looks intact. Travis's relief was so visible it made him look younger. Thank God. Wade did not respond to the phrase, but his eyes moved once toward the dark sky. Claire wondered how faith sat inside him after Hannah. Some people wore belief like Sunday clothes. Others carried it like a folded note in a pocket, creased and private, too precious or too damaged to show. Aaron had been the second kind. He prayed while fixing engines, not with closed eyes, but with both hands busy. Claire had prayed mostly in anger since his death. Short prayers, honest ones. Help me. Do not you dare leave me with this. Tell me what I missed. Tonight beside the ditch, with Travis alive and Aaron's evidence safe, she felt no answer exactly. But she felt the road had not ended.
The ambulance arrived, from Enterprise lights turning the rain red and white. Wade kept the children out of the story when he called Marlene, saying only that Travis was shaken and they would be home soon. Claire heard the choice and appreciated it. Children did not need every fear delivered fresh. When she and Wade drove back behind Eli's truck, Ranger sat with his head between the front seats. Claire reached back and touched the dog's muzzle. You did good. Ranger huffed as if this had never been in doubt. Wade watched her hand. He likes you. He likes biscuits. He can contain multitudes. Claire smiled despite herself. You read poetry, Callahan. Hannah did. Some of it stuck where shrapnel missed. The sentence came lightly, but both of them heard the bruise beneath it. Back at Hollow Pine, the children were awake. Of course they were. Riley stood in the kitchen with Emma against her shoulder, Ben beside her clutching the drawing of Ranger with a badge. Marlene had made cocoa no one had drunk. When Travis called from the ambulance to say he was truly all right and going in for observation, Riley's knees softened so quickly, Wade crossed the room and caught her by the shoulders. I am not little, she whispered, embarrassed by her own shaking. Wade knelt. You are 9. Mom said I was her helper. Helper is not the same as grown-up. Riley's eyes filled. Then who helps you? The question struck him harder than any accusation could have. He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Claire found herself kneeling beside them. Tonight, all of us, she said. Riley looked at her, searching for the trap in comfort. Claire held still and let herself be searched. Emma squirmed between them, unimpressed by adult revelations. Ben came close and whispered, I can help by drinking cocoa. Marlene said from the stove, a noble sacrifice. Ranger rested his chin on Riley's knee. The girl laughed through a tear. It was not a solution, but it was a beginning, and beginnings did not always announce themselves with trumpets. Sometimes they sounded like a child laughing because a dog had bad timing. The next day was ruled by paperwork weather and the stubborn ache that follows fear. Travis remained at the clinic until afternoon, bruised and furious, but cleared. The sheriff, who had avoided Owen's name with the agility of a man stepping around a rattlesnake, could no longer pretend the situation was a neighbor dispute. Aaron's recording went to a state investigator. The tampered loan documents went to a lawyer in LeGrand, whom Marlene knew from a church fundraiser and described as mean in the useful way. Claire spent 2 hours on the phone hearing phrases like preliminary injunction, fraudulent acceleration, and evidentiary chain. She wrote them down, even when she only half understood. Wade sat across from her, repairing a torn halter, mouthing simpler translations when the lawyer wandered into legal fog. At one point he wrote on a scrap of paper, "She means Owen may be in trouble." Claire nearly laughed into the phone. But legal motion did not stop ranch work. The storm lifted by noon,
leaving the pastures slick and shining. A heifer went into labor near the lower cottonwoods too early and in a patch of mud that made everything harder. Claire and Wade handled it with calm, careful efficiency, keeping the scene quiet and non-frightening for the children watching from the fence with Marlene. There was strain. There was worry. There was no need for ugly detail. The calf arrived weak but breathing, and Claire rubbed it with clean towels while Wade held the heifer steady and murmured nonsense so soft she could not catch the words. Riley pressed both hands to her mouth. Ben asked if the calf owed rent now. Marlene said, after breakfast. Ranger watched the whole process with deep concern, then sneezed when the calf tried to wobble near his nose. They named the calf Button, because Riley had already decided, and because no one had the heart to argue. Claire warned her that ranch life was uncertain. Riley nodded, then said, "So are people. We still name them." That silenced everyone for a moment. Wade looked away toward the creek. Claire saw his eyes shine and pretended the wind had made hers do the same. Later, while Button slept in clean straw, Claire found Riley sitting alone on the porch steps. "You miss your mom?" Claire said. Not a question. Riley nodded. "I remember how she smelled when she baked bread, but sometimes I cannot remember her voice unless Daddy says something she used to say. Then I get scared I am losing her." Claire sat beside her. "I used to think if I kept Aaron's office closed, I would keep him exactly where he was. But closed rooms get dusty. Memories do too, maybe." Riley considered this. "So we open them carefully, with backup drives," Claire smiled, "with backup drives." That evening, Wade told Claire more about Hannah. They were in the barn checking Ranger's paw, where a thorn had lodged between the pads. The dog endured treatment like a martyr and accepted Ben's apology on behalf of all thorn bushes. Wade said Hannah had been a school counselor, the kind of woman who remembered which children hated loud cafeterias and which ones needed snacks slipped into backpacks. She had loved old hymns, black coffee, and making Wade talk when he believed silence was a personality. "She wanted chickens," he said. "In Virginia Beach, she said chickens were portable optimism." Claire laughed. "That sounds like a dangerous woman." "She was." His hand slowed on Ranger's paw. "I was overseas when she found out she was pregnant with Emma. I came home in time. Not enough time, but time." Claire did not ask for the rest. He gave her what he could. The hospital was bright, too bright. Machines, white walls, people saying things gently because gentle was all they had left. I had been trained for crisis my whole adult life. Could not do a useful thing except hold her hand. He swallowed. Afterward, everyone kept telling me I was strong. I wanted to throw the word through a window. Claire understood. People called me strong at Aaron's funeral until I wanted to bite. Wade looked at her. "Did you?" Marlene distracted me with casserole, probably for the best. Ranger, sensing attention had drifted from his suffering paw, placed his head heavily on Wade's knee. Claire removed the thorn with tweezers. Ranger sighed as if forgiving humanity. "There," she said. "Derated patient survives." Wade's smile was brief and real. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Travis. "State investigator coming tomorrow. Keep evidence secure. Avoid Price." "Avoid Price," Claire read aloud. "As if he is a pothole?" Wade slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Sometimes potholes do plenty of damage. You think he will try something before the investigator gets here?" "I think men who build power on fear do not enjoy deadlines they did not choose." Claire leaned against the stall door. The barn smelled of straw, iodine, and rain drying from wool. "I could send you away tonight." Wade looked at her for a long moment. "You could. You would go." His eyes moved toward the house where his children were visible through the lit kitchen window. if staying put them in more danger than leaving. And does it? He did not answer quickly. I do not know anymore. Honesty again. She had come to dread and respect it. A dishonest man would have promised safety. A foolish one would have promised victory. Wade offered neither. He offered presence work and a dog who stole biscuits. Claire looked through the barn door at the yellow light Aaron had hung. When he recorded that message, Aaron said somebody good might need the light one night. Wade followed her gaze. He was right. Maybe he meant you. Maybe he meant you too. Claire turned to him. The space between them changed, not romantically in a simple way, not yet, but with recognition. Two people standing in the ruins of different houses, realizing the same light had reached them both. Before either could speak again, Riley screamed from the yard. Not a long scream, a startled cry that ended too quickly. Wade moved first, Claire beside him, Ranger ahead despite his sore paw. They found Riley near the clothesline, Emma safe in Marlene's arms on the porch, Ben behind the screen door. Riley pointed toward the gravel drive. A small box sat near the gate, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. On top was one of Aaron's old survey flags. Wade stopped everyone several yards away. No one touches it. Claire's mouth went dry. The box was ordinary, harmless looking, which made it worse. Travis called immediately, told them to stay back and wait. The state police would handle it. No one discussed possibilities in front of the children. Marlene took them inside and turned on music loud enough to soften the silence. Claire stood with Wade near the porch as dusk gathered. After specialists arrived, the box was examined and found to contain no device, no immediate physical danger. Only a stack of photocopied loan papers, defaced photographs of Hollow Pine, and a note of last chance before the auction moves up. It was psychological cruelty dressed as a threat. Safe in the technical sense, dangerous in the human one. The officer bagged the contents. Travis, pale with anger, apologized as if he had placed the box himself. Claire barely heard. Her eyes were on the loan papers. One page carried her signature again, the forged acknowledgement that could accelerate the auction. Another page had Owen's handwritten initials in the margin, careless, confident, probably never meant to leave his office. Wade saw it too. That may be the tie, he said. Travis nodded slowly. It may. For the first time, Owen's attempt to frighten them had handed them something useful. Night fell late and uneasy. The children slept in the house, all of them, because Claire insisted the barn felt too exposed. Wade took the couch after arguing once and losing to Marlene's raised eyebrow. Ranger slept in the hallway, where he could see both doors. Claire sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else drifted into exhausted rest. Aaron's recording transcribed in front of her, Owen's note sealed in evidence, the bank deadline still circled on the calendar. Wade came in quietly around midnight, moving like a man used to not waking fear. Could not sleep, he asked. Could you? No. He sat across from her. For a while they listened to the house breathe around them. Then Claire said, I am scared. The admission did not weaken her. It unlocked something. Wade nodded. Me too. Outside, somewhere beyond the ridge, an engine started and faded. Ranger lifted his head in the hall but did not rise. Claire looked at Wade. He looked back. The fight had moved into a new stage now. Owen was no longer only threatening property. He was trying to control the story before truth arrived. Claire touched Aaron's dog tag still on the keyring she carried and thought of the barn light. Somebody good may need it one night. Maybe goodness was not a person arriving. Maybe it was what happened after arrival, when frightened people chose not to close the door. Just before dawn, Travis called. His voice was rough but urgent. Claire, the bank filed to move the auction date. Tomorrow morning. They are claiming emergency deterioration after the barn fuel report and the box. I am sorry. Owen is trying to take Hollow Pine before the investigator can freeze it.
The word tomorrow entered the kitchen like a slammed door. Claire held the phone to her ear while dawn spread gray over the windows and the house slept behind her. Tomorrow morning. Emergency auction. Deterioration. Bank discretion. Phrases built to sound neutral while they stole the ground beneath a woman's boots. Wade sat across the table, Emma asleep against his shoulder, his eyes on Claire's face. He did not need to hear Travis's side of the call to understand enough. Ranger lifted his head from the hallway. Even the dog seemed to know a line had been crossed. Claire thanked Travis because manners was sometimes the last fence between fear and collapse, then ended the call and set the phone down with careful precision.
He moved it up, Wade said.
Claire nodded.
Tomorrow at 10. Courthouse steps unless the lawyer gets an emergency hold before then. Can she is trying.
Claire looked at the calendar where the original date still sat circled 2 weeks away, a false promise in red ink.
Owen is claiming the property is unsafe and poorly maintained. Fuel in the barn, trespass incidents, livestock instability. He is turning his sabotage into proof I cannot manage the ranch.
The baby stirred against Wade's chest. He rocked her automatically, the motion so gentle it made Claire's throat tighten. Then we make maintenance visible, he said.
What?
He says the ranch is neglected. We document the opposite. Repairs, cattle inventory, witness statements, photos. Marlene gets townspeople, Travis gets law. Lawyer gets paperwork. You stand in front of that auction with more truth than Owen can smile through.
Claire almost snapped that truth did not always win. She had lived long enough to know that. But Wade's face did not carry naive confidence. It carried a soldier's respect for ugly odds and a father's refusal to surrender before his children had eaten breakfast. That was different. You make it sound simple, she said. No, he shifted Emma to his other arm. I make it sound assigned. A laugh escaped her, small and incredulous. Assigned. Tasks beat terror. Another SEAL saying, father saying. SEALs just use more laminated checklists. Claire rubbed both hands over her face. The day had not even begun and already demanded everything. By 7, Hollow Pine Ranch looked like a place preparing for a county fair and a court hearing at the same time. Marlene arrived with 3 diner regulars she had bullied into usefulness, Herb, who owned a fencing company and had once sworn never to step on Claire's land because Owen was a customer, Denise, a retired school secretary who knew every notary in the county and trusted none of them, and Paul, a church deacon with a camera, a pickup, and the slow, serious manner of a man who considered documentation a spiritual gift. Eli brought 2 ranch hands from neighboring properties who had finally decided silence was more expensive than risk. Travis, bruised but moving, arrived with his deputy jacket zipped high and a stack of forms. The state investigator was still en route, delayed by weather over the pass. The lawyer called every 40 minutes with updates that ranged from promising to keep praying. Riley took charge of a clipboard because Wade asked her to record completed tasks, not because she had to become an adult, but because children in fear sometimes needed honest work scaled to their hands. Ben was named assistant biscuit monitor by Marlene, a role he misunderstood as permission to taste inventory. Emma stayed in a laundry basket, turned bassinet in the warm kitchen, watched by Denise, and occasionally by Ranger, who considered the basket a high-security location. Claire moved through the ranch with a camera and a notebook while Wade led repairs. He never took over the place. He asked where tools were, asked who knew a gate best, asked Claire before changing anything that mattered. That restraint, repeated hour after hour, began to undo something Owen had counted on. The belief that help meant surrender. They photographed the pump Wade had repaired, the secured fuel cans, moved to an exterior locked cabinet. The fixed north gate. The cattle safely counted the calving records, updated the new latch on the barn, The temporary fire extinguishers Travis brought from the station and the spring house, markers Owen had no right to install. Herb signed a statement that the loosened fence posts could not be natural wear. Eli gave a written account of the trucks near the pasture. Marlene recorded her memory of Owen's meeting with the peppermint gum man. Denise found an irregularity in the notarization of Claire's loan modification within 10 minutes and muttered, "Men like Owen always trust grief to be sloppy. Grief is not sloppy, it is busy." Claire wanted to hug her and was too muddy, so she handed her coffee instead. At mid-morning, a small argument broke out near the barn when Herb suggested Claire should have asked for community help months ago. Claire's face closed. Wade, carrying a fence post, paused, but did not intervene. Marlene did. "And perhaps the community should have offered before the house was already smoking," she said, voice sweet enough to make Herb wince. Claire looked at the older woman. Marlene did not look away. Something passed between them, apology, forgiveness, not finished, but begun. Herb removed his cap. "Fair." He turned to Claire. "I should have come by. Aaron helped me rebuild after the freeze of 12. I let Owen's account make me forget that." Claire swallowed. "Then remember fast. Auction is tomorrow." The day became a chain of fast remembering. People came in 2s and 3s. Some brought tools, some brought statements. Some only brought shame and a willingness to stand in the mud. Claire accepted what was useful and left the rest for later. Wade worked until sweat darkened his shirt, despite the cold stopping only when Emma cried and Riley appeared with the baby, because, as she said, "She wants the person with the heartbeat she knows." Wade took Emma and leaned against the fence, eyes closing for a brief second as the baby settled. Claire saw the exhaustion hit him then. He had been running on duty for so long that rest looked unfamiliar on him. "Sit down," she said. "I am fine." That was not a medical opinion, it was an order from the landowner. His mouth twitched. "Yes, ma'am. Do not courthouse me." He sat on a hay bale, Emma against his chest, Ranger at his feet. Claire handed him a sandwich. He stared at it as if she had given him a puzzle. "Eat." "You always this bossy? Only with men who confuse collapse with usefulness." He took a bite. Riley, standing nearby, whispered to Ben, "She is winning." Ben whispered back, "Dad likes orders if they come with food." Wade looked at them. "I hear treason," then hid behind Ranger, who did not hide him well because his tale betrayed delight. By late afternoon, Travis had enough statements to make Owen uncomfortable, but not enough to stop the auction on his own. The lawyer filed for emergency review. The state investigator promised to arrive by morning. Too late, maybe. The bank refused to delay voluntarily. Owen's office did not answer Claire's calls. That absence had its own smell. Near dusk, Claire drove into Joseph with Wade Travis and Marlene to file copies at the courthouse before closing. The children stayed at Hollow Pine with Denise and Eli. Leaving them made Wade's face go still. Claire noticed him check his phone 3 times before they reached the county road. "They are safe," she said. "I know. Ranger stayed. That is why I know." Joseph looked almost pretty in the evening light storefront windows, glowing wet sidewalks, reflecting signs, tourists wandering past bronze horse statues without any idea a ranch's life was being argued in paperwork 2 blocks away. Claire walked into the courthouse with mud on her boots and Aaron's jacket on her shoulders. Owen Price stood near the clerk's counter in a navy coat, speaking softly to a man Claire recognized as a bank attorney from Pendleton. He turned when he saw her. The smile arrived. Of course it did. "Claire," he said, "still collecting strays?" Wade stood beside her, but slightly back. Marlene made a sound under her breath that sounded like a casserole dish choosing violence. Travis stepped forward before she could season it.
Mr. Price, Travis said, I need to advise you that there is an active investigation into property tampering and document irregularities related to Hollow Pine Ranch. Owen lifted his eyebrows. That sounds serious. I hope Claire has not been overwhelmed by conspiracy theories. Stress can do that. Claire felt Wade's stillness beside her. She also felt her own anger rise cleaner now. My stress repaired a pump, counted every cow, found your survey stakes, and filed 3 witness statements today, she said. It has been productive. Marlene's mouth twitched. The clerk behind the counter pretended not to listen, and failed. Owen's gaze moved to Wade. And you, Mr. Callahan, I hear you have quite a past. Specialized training, difficult adjustment, no fixed address, minor children, living in unstable conditions. A story like that can concern people. Wade's face did not change, but Claire saw Riley's question from days ago echo in him. Then who helps you? Owen was not threatening Wade's pride. He was threatening his children. Claire stepped forward. Do not. One word. It filled more space than a speech. Owen looked back at her. Careful, Claire. Desperation makes people attach themselves to dangerous men, Wade answered before Claire could. Dangerous men usually do not have to be described by widows. They describe themselves by what they do when no one powerful is watching. The clerk looked down quickly. Travis coughed once into his fist. They filed the documents. Owen left, first smile intact but thinner. Outside, Marlene gripped Claire's arm. You did not shake. Claire realized it was true. Her hands were cold, but steady. Maybe I am too tired. Wade opened the truck door. Or done being handled. The phrase stayed with her on the drive back. Done being handled. It sounded like a gate closing in the right direction. They returned to Hollow Pine under a violet sky. The barn light glowed. The house windows shone warm. For one brief, foolish moment, Claire let herself believe the night would pass without further trouble. Then they reached the porch and found Denise pale in the doorway. Everyone is safe, she said at once, which only made fear leap faster. Wade moved past her. Where are the kids? Kitchen, with Ranger. Claire followed. Riley sat at the table holding Emma. Ben stood beside Ranger, one hand buried in the dog's fur. On the table lay Claire's old house phone, the cord stretched from the wall. Riley looked up. Mr. Price called. The room went very quiet. Wade's voice remained gentle. What did he say? Riley's lips pressed together. He thought Miss Claire would answer. When I said she was not here, he told me grown-ups make hard choices, and sometimes children get moved by people who know better. Wade closed his eyes for half a second. Claire's anger went white and silent. Denise said, I took the phone as soon as I heard. I am sorry. Riley shook her head. I wrote the number down from caller ID. She pushed a scrap of paper across the table. Travis took it. That is Owen's private line, he said. Wade knelt in front of Riley. You did exactly right. But you should not have had to. Are they going to move us? Ben asked. His voice was very small. Wade looked at his son, then at Claire. This answer belonged to both of them somehow. Claire stepped forward. No one is moving children out of this house tonight, she said. Or tomorrow? Ben asked. Claire looked at Wade again. He did not rescue her from the promise. He waited. She thought of Aaron's light of the gate in the rain, of a baby in a sweatshirt of a girl who had written down a number while scared. Or tomorrow, she said. That promise became the night's center. Travis recorded Riley's account carefully and called the sheriff. This time even the sheriff sounded alarmed. Owen had crossed into intimidation of a child witness, and that carried a different weight. The lawyer added it to the emergency filing.
Marlene made everyone eat because she believed blood sugar was part of moral courage. Claire sat beside Riley while Wade put Ben to bed in the guest room that had once been stacked with boxes. Emma slept in the old room with good morning light, the room Claire had avoided for 18 months. She stood in its doorway later, watching Wade place the baby in the borrowed crib Denise had somehow produced from her church basement. The sight should have broken her. Instead, it made something unclench. "Aaron wanted this room full," she said. Wade kept his hand on Emma's blanket until the baby's breathing settled. Hannah wanted noise. She said quiet houses made grief too comfortable. Claire leaned against the doorframe. She was probably right. Often. The old exchange returned, softer now. They stood without speaking. Down the hall, Ben murmured in sleep. Ranger's nails clicked as he patrolled. Riley whispered something to Marlene. The house held. Near midnight, Wade found Claire on the porch. The sky had cleared again, stars bright above the ridge. "You promised tomorrow," he said. "I did. That is a lot to promise." "Yes," she looked at him. "You carried 3 children 7 miles in the rain because you saw a light. Do not lecture me about impractical promises." He accepted that with a small nod. "Fair." The wind moved between them. "If the auction happens," he said, "we still fight after." Claire heard the unspoken offer. "We. You do not have to stay." "I know. That was your chance to say you will." "I am trying not to make promises from gratitude." Claire studied him. "Then make one from choice." He looked toward the barn light, then back at her. "I will be here tomorrow." The promise had barely settled when Ranger began barking inside. Not loud with panic, but sharp with alarm. Wade and Claire ran in. The kitchen window over the sink stood open, though Claire had locked it. On the sill lay a small digital recorder, its red light blinking. Someone had placed it from outside while they stood on the porch. Travis, woken from the couch, bagged it without touching the surface. When he played the file through a speaker, Owen's voice filled the kitchen. Captured by his own call to Riley. Every word clear. Grown-ups make hard choices. Sometimes children get moved by people who know better. The room listened in stunned silence. Marlene crossed herself. Claire stared at the recorder, then at Wade. Owen had meant to listen. Instead, he had left them proof. Before dawn, the lawyer called again. Her voice was hoarse, but alive with purpose. The judge would not stop the auction without a hearing, but he had ordered the bank to accept evidence on site before finalizing any sale. It was not victory. It was a crack in the wall. Claire dressed in clean jeans, Aaron's jacket, and the boots she had worn to bury him. Wade woke the children gently. "Do we have to go?" Riley asked. Claire answered before he could. "Yes." "Owen tried to make you part of his fear. Today, you get to be part of the truth." Riley nodded, serious and pale. Ben asked if Ranger could wear the paper badge from his drawing. Wade said no. Marlene said yes in spirit. Ranger, unaware of legal symbolism, stole 1 biscuit from the counter and proved morale remained complicated. At 9:30, they drove toward Joseph in 2 trucks, a line of neighbors behind them. Hollow Pine receded in the rearview mirror. Barn light still faintly visible despite the morning. Claire did not know whether she would come back as owner or visitor. She did know that the truck was not empty. Wade sat beside her. Ranger rode with the children in Marlene's Subaru. Travis carried evidence. Riley held Emma. Ben held the drawing. The road curved toward town, and the courthouse bell began to ring 10 before the hour, each note crossing the valley like a challenge. On the steps ahead, Owen Price waited in his white hat, smiling for the small crowd gathered to watch a widow lose her land. The courthouse steps in Joseph had seen weddings, tax protests,
school photographs, and more quiet losses than anyone cared to count. That morning they saw Claire Donovan climb from her truck with mud still tucked into the seams of her boots and Aaron's jacket buttoned against a wind that smelled of wet stone. The small crowd turned toward her. Some faces held pity, which she hated. Some held curiosity, which she hated more. A few held shame, those she could bear. Wade stepped down on the passenger side, not close enough to look like a bodyguard, close enough that she felt the steadiness of him. Marlene arrived behind them with Riley, Ben, Emma, and Ranger. The German shepherd wore no badge paper or otherwise, but he walked with such solemn authority that Ben whispered, "He knows this is courtish," Riley corrected. "Courthouse." Ben nodded. "Court-ish house." Owen Price stood near the top step with the bank attorney and a county auction official. His white hat was immaculate. His smile was not. It had tightened around the edges overnight, and Claire took a small, ungenerous comfort in that. Travis met them near the curb, face bruised, uniform pressed, evidence case in hand. "State investigator is 10 minutes out," he said. "Judge's order says they can proceed with opening statements but cannot finalize transfer before reviewing submitted evidence."
"So Owen will try to rush," Claire said.
"Yes." Marlene adjusted Emma's blanket. "Then we shall be irritatingly slow." Wade glanced at her. "Ma'am, you may have missed your tactical calling. Young man, I have run a diner breakfast rush after church. War fears me." The auction official, a nervous man named Mr. Phelps, began reading from a folder in a voice too thin for the wind. He described Hollow Pine Ranch by parcel numbers and acreage, water access and structures, outstanding debt and emergency acceleration. Hearing her home translated into numbers made Claire feel as if someone were inventorying a body and forgetting the person. The barn was not Structure B. It was Aaron rewiring in the rain, Ranger guarding children, Sunday sulking. Hay dust in morning light. The north pasture was not grazing parcel 3, it was the place where Button had taken her first shaking steps. The spring house was not a resource feature. It was the old blessing under the grass. Owen's attorney spoke next, smooth and sorrowful. He painted Claire as overwhelmed, the ranch as deteriorating, the recent incidents as proof of unsafe conditions. He did not mention that many incidents had Owen's fingerprints nearby. Men like him enjoyed passive voice. Fuel was found, gates were cut, children were present, livestock wandered. Claire listened and felt anger steady her spine. Passive voice was where cowards hid their verbs. When Mr. Phelps invited response, Claire stepped forward before Travis or the lawyer on speakerphone could prompt her. Her own attorney was listening through Wade's phone, ready to object if needed. Claire did not sound like a lawyer. She sounded like a rancher. "Hollow Pine is not deteriorating," she said. "It is being targeted." The crowd shifted. Owen's attorney objected to the word. Claire kept her eyes on Mr. Phelps. "We have documentation of repaired infrastructure, cattle inventory, unauthorized survey markers, tampered gates, witness statements, and a recorded call from Mr. Price's private line to a child in my home last night. We also have evidence that loan documents used to accelerate this sale may have been altered or obtained under circumstances that need legal review." Her voice did not shake. She wondered distantly when that had happened. Maybe sometime in the night while promising Ben no one would move them tomorrow. Maybe strength came not from feeling brave, but from running out of acceptable alternatives. Owen stepped forward, smile restored for the crowd. "Claire, everyone here sympathizes with your grief. We truly do. But grief can make patterns where none exist. You have opened your property to a transient veteran with known trauma, several children, and an animal trained for aggressive response. Since his arrival, incidents have increased." Wade did not move. Claire felt the crowd's attention slide toward him and the children. Riley stiffened. Ben pressed closer to Marlene.
Ranger stood still, but his ears moved toward Wade, waiting for the smallest cue. Wade gave none. He simply looked at Owen as if the man were a weather condition that would pass if no one fed it fear.
Then Riley stepped out from behind Marlene.
"My dad did not make the call," she said. Her voice was small, but the steps carried it. "Mr. Price did." Wade's face changed. "Riley," he said softly. Claire wanted to pull the girl back and wrap her in every blanket in the world, but Riley was not performing. She was correcting the record. Mr. Phelps looked uncomfortable. "Young lady, this may not be the place." Denise, standing in the crowd with her purse clutched like a legal weapon, said,
"Truth is often inconveniently located." A few people murmured. Travis stepped forward. "I have the recording and a written statement taken in the presence of witnesses."
Owen's smile slipped. "A misunderstanding," he said. "I called to speak with Claire. Children mishear adult conversations." Riley's cheeks flushed, but she did not retreat. Ben, who apparently considered this a family assignment, now lifted his drawing of Ranger. "He said children get moved." Marlene put a hand on his shoulder. "That is enough, sweetheart." But it was not nothing. The crowd had heard. Owen's attorney whispered urgently to him.
The state investigator arrived then, a woman named Dana Holt, in a gray coat and practical boots. She did not rush, which somehow made her seem more official than anyone else there. Travis handed her the evidence case. Claire watched Owen watch the exchange. For the first time, his confidence looked like calculation instead of certainty. Dana Holt reviewed the judge's order, spoke briefly with the auction official, then requested a recess to examine the submitted materials before any sale action. Owen objected. His attorney objected more politely. Mr. Phelps, sweating despite the cold, agreed to the recess. The crowd broke into clusters of whispers. Claire stepped down from the platform and found her knees threatening betrayal. Wade was there, but did not catch her because she did not fall. Instead, he handed her a paper cup of coffee Marlene had produced from somewhere mysterious. "You sounded like you had done that before," he said. "I have argued with feed suppliers. Similar suits." His mouth lifted. "You did good. Do not make me cry on courthouse steps." "Noted." Ranger pushed his head under Claire's free hand. She looked down. "This dog has boundary issues," Wade said. "He calls them ministry." During the recess, townspeople approached in hesitant waves. Herb offered to testify about the fence. Paul showed photos. A woman Claire barely knew from church said Owen's company had asked about buying her access easement too. A retired county clerk remembered irregular filings. Fear, once cracked, began leaking stories. Marlene stood at the center of it, connecting names, correcting dates, handing out napkins as if legal awakening required diner service. Claire watched her with a strange ache. For months she had believed the town had abandoned her. In part it had. But some abandonments were cowardice that could be repented of, others were waiting for someone to stand first. She wished standing first did not cost so much. Wade spent the recess with the children near a stone bench. Emma fussed until he walked her in slow circles. Riley sat rigid, adrenaline fading into shame. Wade knelt before her. Claire could not hear everything, but she saw him place both hands palm up on his knees, offering rather than demanding. Later, Riley would tell Claire, he said, "Being brave does not mean you owe adults your fear." Riley had answered, "But I wanted him to stop lying." Wade had said, "That is different. That is courage with a reason." Ben asked if courage with a reason could have cocoa. Wade said, "Almost certainly." Ranger leaned against all three of them, distributing fur and reassurance without discrimination. Dana Holt returned after 40 minutes. Her face gave nothing away. She asked for additional time to review loan documents and requested that the sale be stayed pending preliminary investigation into fraud and intimidation. Owen's attorney argued that allegations were unsupported. Dana played the portion of the recorded call. The words traveled over the courthouse steps in Owen's own voice. Grown-ups make hard choices. Sometimes children get moved by people who know better.
The crowd went very still. It was not the worst thing a man could say. It was not dramatic enough for a movie villain. That was why it chilled them. Everyone recognized the tone of power speaking gently because it believed no one would challenge it. Mr. Phelps cleared his throat. Under the judge's order and at the investigator's request, the auction would be suspended for 72 hours pending emergency review. Not canceled, suspended. The word was imperfect and beautiful. Claire closed her eyes. Marlene said, "Amen," not loudly but with feeling. Ben asked, "Did we win?" Wade looked at Claire. Claire opened her eyes and looked at the courthouse, and the crowd, the children, the sky. "We got time," she said. "Sometimes that is the first win." Riley nodded like she understood too well. Owen did not explode. That would have made him simpler. He adjusted his coat, spoke quietly with his attorney, and walked down the steps toward Claire. Travis moved to intercept, but Dana Holt lifted a hand, watching. Owen stopped 2 feet away. "You are turning this into something ugly," he said. Claire almost laughed. "You left notes near my barn, moved my auction, called a child, and tried to use my husband's death as paperwork. Do not accuse me of ugliness." His eyes hardened. "You have no idea what you are standing in the way of." Wade spoke from beside the children, not moving closer. "That is usually what people say when they cannot defend what they are doing." Owen looked at him. "You think a few days on a ranch makes you family?" The question landed where it was meant to. Wade's jaw tightened. Claire answered, "Family is not your word to define." Owen left without another smile. That frightened Claire more than if he had shouted. His truck pulled away from the courthouse and turned, not toward the bank, but toward the road leading out of town. Travis noticed. So did Dana. "We will keep eyes on him," Travis said. Dana was already on the phone. Claire gathered the children. "We go home." Home. The word came easily now, and Riley heard it. Her face softened, then carefully hid the softness. Ben announced that suspended meant the ranch was in time out, but good time out. Marlene declared that legal terminology had rarely improved so quickly. They returned to Hollow Pine under a sky opening to blue. For the first time in days, the ranch looked almost peaceful. Button slept near the heifer. Sunday stood in the paddock, pretending indifference to everyone. The barn light, though unnecessary in daylight, still hung over the door like an emblem of stubborn hospitality. Neighbors followed them back, not all, but enough. They brought tools, feed, a borrowed security camera, and more opinions than Claire could process. Wade installed temporary motion lights while Travis coordinated patrols. Dana Holt interviewed Marlene at the kitchen table. Riley helped Denise label evidence copies. Ben showed Button the ranger drawing, and Button attempted to eat the corner. Late afternoon brought a quiet moment near the spring house. Claire found Wade there, checking the monitoring cap. Ranger sniffed the ground nearby. 72 hours, she said. A lot can happen in 72 hours. Yes. He looked toward the pastures. But Owen lost control of the clock. Claire stood beside him. You always talk like battles are made of clock skates and sandwiches. They often are. And people. He turned. Especially people. The wind moved through the pines. Claire wanted to ask what happened after 72 hours, after the investigation, after the ranch was safe or lost. Where would he go?
What would become of the children? What would become of this fragile, almost family forming in the middle of danger? She did not ask because the answer might require promises neither of them could make cleanly. That night, for the first time, they all ate in the dining room instead of the kitchen. Marlene insisted. A suspended auction deserves proper plates. Claire used Aaron's mother's dishes, which had not come out since the funeral. No one mentioned that directly. Wade noticed, of course. Riley noticed too and handled each plate as if it were part of a ceremony. Ben spilled milk within 4 minutes, restoring balance to the universe. Emma slept through most of it. Ranger lay beneath the table and accepted fallen crumbs with the humility of a saint and the speed of a thief. The meal was not peaceful, exactly. Phones buzzed, Travis checked in, Dana asked follow-up questions. But laughter returned more than once, and Claire felt the house stretching around them, testing its old beans against new weight. After the children slept, Claire found Wade in Aaron's office, staring at the wall of ranch photos. I did not mean to intrude, he said. You are allowed in here. The words surprised them both. He looked at her. Claire, do not make it a monument. I cannot live in a monument. He nodded slowly. On the desk lay Aaron's USB, copied 3 times now. Claire touched it. He thought protecting me meant silence. I thought honoring him meant carrying everything alone. We were both wrong, I guess. Wade's voice was low. Hannah used to say love that never asks for help becomes pride wearing church clothes. Claire laughed softly. I would have liked her. She would have liked you. The past and present stood together in the room, not fighting for space. The phone rang at 11:16 p.m. Travis. Claire put it on speaker. His voice was taut. Owen's truck was found near the old logging road above your north pasture. Empty. State units are looking. We think he may be on foot. Wade was already standing. Ranger lifted his head in the hallway. Travis continued, stay inside. Lock doors. Patrol is 10 minutes out. Claire looked through the office window toward the dark ridge. The barn light glowed below it, steady and gold. Why would he come here? She asked. Dinah Holt's voice came on the line from Travis's end. Because if he cannot win the auction cleanly, he may try to destroy the evidence or create another emergency condition. Claire's eyes moved to the barn, the spring house, the file boxes, the children sleeping upstairs. Wade's face had gone calm in the way she now recognized as deeply alert. Outside, Ranger began a low, steady growl toward the north pasture. The 72 hours had not bought peace. They had bought the shape of Owen's last mistake. Night over Hollow Pine Ranch did not fall so much as gather. It gathered in the pines above the north pasture, in the black windows of the old machine shed, in the hollow places between the outbuildings where wind pushed loose straw along the ground. Claire stood in Aaron's office with Travis still on speakerphone and watched Wade change without seeming to move. The softness he had carried at dinner folded inward. His face remained calm, but his attention widened to include every door, every sleeping child, every path between the house and barn. Ranger's growl continued from the hallway, low enough that Emma did not wake, and steady enough that Claire's skin prickled. This was not the bark he used for strange deer or offended horses. This was the sound of certainty. Lock the upstairs windows, Wade said. Then, before Claire could bristle, he added, please, I will check the back door. She went because the request was reasonable and because pride was a poor alarm system. On the stairs, she paused at the guest room. Riley was awake, sitting upright in bed with Emma's basket beside her, and Ben curled under a quilt on the floor because he had insisted floors were more camp. Riley's eyes found Claire in the dark. Is he here? Claire did not lie. Maybe. Police are coming. Do we hide? The question was practical, not panicked. Claire hated that a child had learned to ask it.
We stay together and quiet. Your dad and Ranger know what to do, and so do I. Riley looked at Emma. I can carry her. If we need you to, yes. Right now your job is socks. Socks? Cold feet make brave people cranky. Riley stared, then nodded with grave acceptance. Behind her, Ben mumbled, Ranger hates socks.
Downstairs, Marlene had already put shoes on and tied her robe with the determination of a frontier general.
Children? She asked.
Awake enough?
Of course they are. Fear has no respect for bedtime.
Denise, who had chosen to stay after dinner rather than drive home, collected the evidence copies from the kitchen table and placed them in 3 separate bags without being told. Claire saw that and felt a fierce gratitude. The ranch had become a web. Owen could still tug at it,
But it no longer had only one strand. Wade returned from the back door.
No signs at the house. Ranger is keying north. Travis's voice crackled from the phone. Patrol is 7 minutes out. State units are above the logging road.
Owen knows the old paths, Claire asked. If Aaron showed him maps, maybe. If he surveyed illegally, definitely. Wade looked toward the barn. What matters most out there, Claire understood the question. Not emotionally, strategically. The evidence in the house. The barn,
If he wants another deterioration claim. The spring house, if he wants to destroy proof of water interest. The cattle, if he wants chaos. He cannot do all of it alone. Owen rarely does anything alone. As if answering a faint sound carried across the yard. Metal against metal. From the barn, maybe the side latch. Ranger barked once and moved to the front door. Wade did not run outside. That was the first thing Claire noticed. A younger man, or a man eager to prove himself, might have rushed into darkness and given Owen exactly what he wanted. Wade turned off the kitchen light, leaving only the low lamp near the stove. We wait for lights, he said. If someone is at the barn, they want us out. Claire nodded, though every ranch instinct screamed at her to protect the animals, the hay, the place Aaron built. Waiting felt like betrayal. Then Emma began to cry upstairs, startled by the changed voices. The sound cut through Claire's urge and reminded her what mattered first. Property could be rebuilt. Children could not be used as bait for pride. Headlights appeared at the far bend, then another set from the south road. Travis stayed on the phone until Deputy Lynn and a state trooper pulled into the yard. Their arrival did not bring relief, exactly. It brought witnesses. Wade opened the front door only after verifying their vehicles. Ranger stayed pressed at his side. The officers swept the yard with flashlights. No dramatic confrontation waited there, no figure in a black coat. Only fresh footprints near the barn's side entrance and the cut on the exterior camera cable Wade had installed that afternoon. The barn door stood closed, but the latch had been tampered with. Inside, Sunday snorted. A feed bin had been opened, and a packet of documents sat in the center aisle held down by a horseshoe. Claire recognized the copies of the loan papers from the courthouse packet. Not hers. Owen's. Or a version he wanted found. Dana Holt arrived minutes later with Travis, who should have been resting and clearly had no intention of doing so. She examined the papers where they lay. "Do not touch," she said, though no one had moved. The documents claimed Claire had agreed to additional safety inspections and had failed to comply. The signatures looked like hers at a glance, but Denise, peering from the doorway with reading glasses perched on her nose, said, "No." Everyone turned. "What do you mean, no?" Travis asked. Denise pointed from a distance. "That loop on the C. A forger copied her recent signature from bank papers. Claire signed differently before Aaron died. Look at old receipts." Dana's eyes sharpened. "You can testify to that?" Denise straightened. "I spent 32 years catching forged parent notes. I was born for this unpleasant moment." Marlene made a sound of satisfaction that would have frightened lesser men. Claire felt the night tilt again, this time in their favor.
Owen had tried to plant documents. Instead, he had given Dana fresh evidence of fabrication. Wade stood near the barn door, eyes on the darkness beyond the corral. Ranger's nose worked. "He was here," Wade said. "Recently." Dana looked at the footprints. "Can your dog track?" "Yes." "Can he do it without putting anyone in danger?"
Wade looked at Claire before answering. She realized he was not asking permission to use the dog. He was acknowledging that every choice on this land touched her. "He can track to direction. We do not have to follow beyond line of sight." Dana nodded. "Do that." Ranger took the scent from the barn latch and moved toward the spring house, slow and deliberate. Wade followed on a loose lead. Claire walked behind with Dana and Travis flashlights angled low. The officers stayed spread but close. The children watched from the porch under Marlene's guard, small shapes wrapped in quilts. Claire hated that they were awake for this, but she also knew they were seeing something Owen had not intended adults working together on. Fear being managed rather than worshipped. Ranger stopped twice near the creek, then pulled toward the old spring house door. The lock hung open. Inside the spring house, the air smelled of damp stone and cold water. Claire had always loved that smell. It was the scent of survival in dry August, of Aaron filling jars from the old pipe and calling it better than anything bottled. Tonight, it carried another scent beneath it, sharp and chemical, not strong enough to endanger anyone where they stood, but wrong enough to turn the stomach. Wade held Ranger back. Dana called for the trooper with a testing kit. "Everyone out," she said. "Now." They obeyed. There was no panic, no shouted chaos, only disciplined movement away from the structure. The trooper later confirmed a container had been opened near the monitoring cap, likely intended to compromise water samples or create suspicion about ranch safety. It was contained quickly by professionals. Claire did not need more detail. The intention was clear: make Hollow Pine look unsafe, then blame the widow. As the officers secured the area, Travis received a verdict call. A state unit had found footprints leading from the spring house trail toward the old bridge, then tire tracks from a vehicle hidden off the logging road. Owen was still not in custody. Mitch Doyle, however, had been stopped outside town with mud on his boots and peppermint gum in his pocket. Under questioning at the roadside, he began talking enough to make his own attorney wish he enjoyed silence. He claimed Owen told him to create pressure, but insisted he never meant anyone physical harm. Dana's face remained hard. "Pressure is what cowards call harm when they hire it done by the hour," she said. Claire stood near the porch as the first edge of dawn lightened the east. The children had finally fallen asleep in a pile of quilts in the living room, Ranger stationed beside them after Wade released him from work. Wade came up beside her carrying 2 mugs of coffee. One had a chip in the rim. Aaron's mug. He realized at the same moment she did. "Sorry," he said. "Marlene handed it to me." Claire took it anyway. "It is just a mug." That was not entirely true. It was also true enough. She wrapped her hands around it. "Do you ever get tired of being careful?" Wade looked out at the yard where evidence markers glowed pale in flashlight beams. "Yes." "What happens then?" "I make mistakes." The honesty settled plain and useful. "Is staying here one?" she asked. He turned toward her. No. This time he did not qualify it. He did not soften it with ifs or maybes. "No," he said again. Leaving out of fear would be, the state investigator ordered patrol coverage through the day. The lawyer called at 6:30 with better news. The judge, informed of the planted documents and the Springhouse incident, had extended the stay indefinitely, pending investigation. The auction was no longer merely suspended, it was frozen. Claire sat down hard on the porch step when she heard. Ben, awakened by adult voices, shuffled out with hair in every direction. "Did the ranch get out of timeout?" he asked. Claire laughed.
then cried a little, then laughed again. Yes, Ben. The ranch got out of timeout. He considered this. Does it get cocoa? Marlene from inside shouted. Everybody gets cocoa if somebody else washes the pot. Relief did not erase danger, but it changed its size. Owen was wanted for questioning. Mitch's statement gave investigators enough to search Price Valley development offices. Travis, bruised and exhausted, looked as if a burden had lifted from his shoulders and been replaced by paperwork which he accepted as an improvement. Dana Holt coordinated with state police. Neighbors kept arriving, some with news, some with tools, some with the awkward generosity of people late to courage. Claire let them come. That was new. She did not confuse their help with rescue. She understood now that community was not a fairy tale where everyone arrived on time. Sometimes it was a messy repair crew showing up after damage and deciding to be better. By afternoon, Wade and Eli repaired the spring house lock, while professionals handled the contamination concern. No one drank from the spring until cleared. Claire called the vet, the water lab, the lawyer, and the insurance company. Each call that once would have hollowed her out now became one task among many. Riley made a new clipboard titled, Things That Are Getting Fixed. Under it she wrote Gate Pump Spring Grown-Ups. Claire saw the last item and nearly lost her composure. Grown-ups may take a while, she said. Riley nodded. I left space. Late that day, a woman from Child and Family Services arrived because Owen, in one of his final acts before vanishing, had filed a concern about Wade's children living in a barn. Claire's first reaction was fury. Wade's was fear so deep it barely moved his face. He stood very still while the woman introduced herself kindly and explained she had to follow up. The children froze. Ranger sensed the shift and placed himself between Ben and the stranger until Wade quietly called him back. Claire watched Wade struggle not to look like the dangerous man Owen had described. It hurt to see. He could face trucks in the dark and planted evidence with steady hands, but the possibility of losing his children drained color from him. The visit was thorough and gentle. Marlene had already prepared food. Denise produced the borrowed crib receipt. Claire showed the guest room, the baby supplies, the warm kitchen, the repaired barn stall no longer used for sleeping. Riley spoke clearly, saying her father cared for them and Miss Claire helped. Ben volunteered that Ranger did not bite good people and that Owen smiled mean, which the caseworker wrote down with admirable professionalism. Wade answered every question. When asked about housing stability, his voice roughened. I had less than I should have, he said. I am fixing that. The caseworker looked around the house, at the neighbors, outside at Claire standing close enough to matter. It appears you are not fixing it alone, she said. Wade did not answer. His eyes shone. After she left with no immediate concern and the list of veteran family resources, Riley went to the porch and sat alone. Wade followed, but stopped when Claire touched his arm. Let me, she said. He hesitated, then nodded. Claire sat beside the girl. The evening smelled of wet grass and coffee. You thought she might take you? Claire said. Riley nodded, staring at her shoes. After Mom died, people kept saying Dad needed help. I thought help meant someone else decides. Claire leaned back on her hands. Sometimes help is a door. Sometimes it is a net. The trick is telling the difference. How? Claire looked toward Wade, who stood in the yard with Emma in his arms, Ben showing him a rock shaped vaguely like Idaho. You watch whether it lets people stand taller or makes them smaller. Riley thought about that. You let Dad stand taller? Claire's throat tightened. He has done the same for me. Evening settled with less fear than the previous one, though patrol lights still passed on the road. The spring house was secured. The documents were copied.
The children slept in real beds. Claire stood in the barn doorway with Wade, while Ranger snored softly in the straw, off duty at last. "I keep waiting to wake up and find the gate empty again," she said. Wade looked at her. "Do you want it empty?" "No." The answer came before she could make it safer. He heard it. So did she. Neither moved. Sunday shifted in his stall as if embarrassed for them. "Claire," Wade said softly. Whatever he might have said next was interrupted by Travis's cruiser racing up the drive, lights flashing, but siren off. Travis stepped out, face grim. "They found Owen's truck abandoned near the canyon bridge. There is evidence he went down toward the old service tunnel under the ridge. He may be trying to reach the spring line from below." Claire looked toward the dark outline of the hills. Aaron had told her once the old service tunnel was unstable after storms. Wade's hand tightened once on the barn door. Ranger woke, lifted his head, and listened toward the mountain, as if the ground itself had called his name. The service tunnel under the North Ridge was not a mine, though every child in the valley had called it one at some point. It had been dug decades earlier to reach a buried spring line, and later abandoned when safer equipment made the route unnecessary. Aaron had hated it. Claire remembered him standing at its rusted gate 3 summers before his death, hands on hips, saying the tunnel had the personality of a bad idea. He welded the gate shut after a teenager got stuck during a dare. Now Travis stood in the barn light, telling her Owen might be moving toward that same place, and every practical part of Claire's mind arranged the dangers without needing them described. Unstable ground. Old metal, no lights, a desperate man who had spent years believing consequences were for other people. "We call search and rescue," Wade said. Travis nodded. "Already called. State police, too. But if he reaches the spring line access before they get here, he could damage more evidence, or hurt himself." Claire heard what he did not say, and Owen in danger was still a human being in danger. That angered her at first. Some childish part of her wanted Owen to become the kind of problem no one had to save. Then she looked at Wade, at the way his face held no affection for Owen, and no eagerness for harm. He had spent his adult life trained for hard places, yet his first instinct was not punishment. It was containment. Rescue if needed, stop the damage, keep people alive. That was not weakness. It was discipline with a soul. The children were moved to Marlene's car, not to leave the property unless necessary, but to keep them warm together and away from the radio chatter. Riley protested until Wade knelt and told her the truth scaled small. "Mr. Price may be somewhere unsafe. We are going to help the officers keep the ranch safe and make sure nobody gets hurt." Riley's face twisted. "Even him?" Wade's eyes were tired. "Especially when we do not want to." Ben frowned. "That is annoying." Marlene said, "Morality often is sugar." Ranger stood at Wade's side, fully awake now, sore paw forgotten or ignored. No one charged into the tunnel. Dana Holt arrived and established a perimeter with the state trooper. Search and rescue was 20 minutes out. Wade provided what he knew about moving safely with a trained dog near unstable ground, but he did not pretend to be in command. Claire appreciated that. Men who had once commanded well often had trouble stepping back. Wade seemed to understand roles. Travis handled law, Dana handled investigation, search and rescue would handle entry. Claire handled land knowledge. Wade and Ranger handled scent direction from safe ground. Together they formed something Owen had never understood: authority shared without being weakened. The old service road was slick under their boots. Flashlights swept over wet pine trunks and mossy stone. The tunnel gate stood half open when they reached it. Someone had cut through Aaron's old weld with a portable tool and left the gate hanging crooked. Claire touched the cold metal with gloved fingers, anger pulsing through her. Aaron had sealed this place to protect foolish teenagers from themselves. Owen had opened it to protect his lie.
Ranger sniffed the gate, then the ground,
then looked into the dark entrance and whined once. Wade listened to that sound.
He is in there, or was recently. Dana radioed search and rescue, then turned to Claire. How far to the Spring Line junction? Maybe 200 yards. It bends twice. There is a low section that floods. Aaron said the ceiling near the second bend was unreliable. Wade looked at the gate. No one untrained goes in.
Waiting outside a dangerous place can be harder than entering it. Claire learned that in the next 15 minutes.
The rescue crew arrived, suited and equipped, calm in the way professionals are calm when they respect danger. They asked Claire precise questions. She answered all she could. Wade kept Ranger back, using him only to confirm scent at the entrance and along a secondary vent opening above the slope. Travis stood beside Dana, jaw tight,
Likely thinking about every time he had let Owen's influence slow his suspicions.
Marlene's car was visible through the trees below, hazard lights blinking. Claire could see Riley's pale face in the window, Ben's hand pressed against the glass. Emma's blanket bright in Marlene's arms. They looked so small from up there. The ranch looked small too. All human things did against a mountain in the dark.
The first update from inside came by radio. Fresh footprints, disturbed mud. No contact.
The second, a bag found near the spring line, with tools and document copies secured. The third came after a long silence, voice contact. Owen was ahead, near a partial collapse, responsive but trapped beyond unstable debris. Not gravely injured, they said. Scared, angry, refusing instructions at first. Claire closed her eyes. The urge to say good rose and embarrassed her. Wade, as if sensing the battle in her, spoke without looking at her. Mercy is not pretending he did not choose this. It is choosing not to become him. Claire swallowed. Hannah. Luis. He looked at Ranger. And maybe Hannah later.
The rescue took time. Safe rescues do.
That was the part stories often rushed, but Claire would remember every slow minute. The careful communication, the passing of equipment, the way Dana documented the recovered bag, the way Travis, unable to enter, held the radio so tightly his knuckles paled, the way Wade stood with Ranger's lead loose in his hand, breathing evenly, though Claire could see the tunnel working on old memories inside him. Dark, confined spaces, waiting voices, the past pressing its face to the present. She moved closer. You can step back, she said quietly. I know. He did not. But his breathing changed because she had offered.
When Owen was brought out, it was not triumphant.
He looked smaller under the rescue lights, mud on his expensive coat, hat gone face, stripped of its courthouse polish. No one cheered. No one mocked him. Claire was grateful for that. Owen saw her and looked away first. That, more than any handcuffs, told her something had shifted. He was evaluated by medics, then detained for questioning once cleared. The evidence bag from the tunnel contained altered documents, a small container connected to the Springhouse incident, and a notebook with payment records tied to Mitch Doyle and others. Dana's face when she reviewed the contents held the controlled satisfaction of a door finally unlocking. Travis approached Claire as state officers escorted Owen toward a vehicle. I am sorry, he said. Claire looked at him. For tonight. For taking this long, for letting him be a rich man's problem instead of a criminal one. The apology did not fix the months Claire had spent alone under Owen's pressure. But it mattered. Then do better loudly, she said. Travis nodded. I intend to. Marlene, who had come up the road once the danger passed, said, and eat something before you faint into redemption, Travis sighed. Yes, ma'am. Even Dana Holt smiled faintly at that.
The ride back to the ranch happened just before dawn. Exhaustion filled the truck heavy, but not hopeless. Wade sat beside Claire, while Ranger slept in the back seat, finally spent. Neither spoke until the barn light appeared through the trees. Claire slowed the truck at the gate. The house stood beyond, windows lit, children waiting. The ranch was scarred, muddy, under investigation, still in debt, still uncertain. But it was standing. "He could have died in there," Claire said. "Yes, I did not want him to." She sounded surprised by herself. Wade looked at her. "Good. It does not mean I forgive him. No. It means I am not him." Wade nodded. "Exactly." The children poured onto the porch when the trucks arrived, despite Marlene's attempts at order. Ben reached Ranger first and announced that the dog smelled like mountain basement. Riley hugged Wade with one arm and Claire with the other, before seeming to realize what she had done. She started to pull away. Claire held on a second longer, not tight, just enough to say the accident was welcome. Emma woke and began to cry because everyone else had opinions. Wade took her up, and the baby quieted against him. The eastern sky turned rose over the fields. Sleep came in shifts that morning. Claire dreamed of gates opening and closing, not with threat, but with choice. When she woke at noon, the house was quiet, except for the murmur of voices in the kitchen. Wade was there, with Travis, Dana, and the lawyer on speakerphone. Owen had been formally questioned. Search warrants were underway. The fraudulent acceleration was being challenged with strong support from the investigator. Price Valley Bank's board, suddenly interested in ethics now that state agencies were watching, had placed Owen on leave pending review. The original auction was canceled. Not postponed. Canceled. Claire stood in the hallway barefoot, hearing the word travel through her like water through dry ground. Marlene saw her first. "You heard?" Claire nodded. "Say it again anyway." The lawyer laughed through the phone, tired and bright. "The emergency auction is canceled, Mrs. Donovan. We still have work ahead regarding the loan and fraud claims, but Hollow Pine will not be sold out from under you." Claire sat down because her legs had become theoretical. Ben climbed into the chair beside her. "So the ranch is not in timeout?" "No." "Is Mr. Price in timeout?" Travis said. "Something like that." Marlene muttered, "May it be lengthy and educational." Relief brought its own kind of collapse. Claire cried in the pantry, where she thought no one would see, and Wade found her because Ranger betrayed her location by sitting outside the door. She laughed through tears when she opened it. "Your dog is a gossip." Operationally attentive. "He ratted me out." Wade leaned against the doorframe. "Want privacy?" Claire wiped her face. "I do not know anymore." He nodded, understanding too well. For so long, both of them had used privacy as armor. Now it sometimes felt like a room without air. They stood in the pantry among flour sacks and canned peaches. Not romantic, unless romance could smell faintly of oats and dust. Maybe it could. "What happens now?" Claire asked. Wade looked down. "For Owen?" "For you." He exhaled slowly. "I need work, stable housing, school enrollment for Riley, medical follow-up for Emma. A way to be a father that is not just emergency response." "That sounds like a list." "Tasks beat terror," Claire smiled. "Hollow Pine has work." His eyes lifted to hers. "Claire, I am not offering charity." "I know." "Foreman position temporary at first. Housing in the old bunkhouse once we clean it up, or the guest rooms until then. Pay will be insulting until the loan mess clears." "I have accepted worse offers with fewer biscuits." She tried to smile, but fear fluttered beneath it. "And after temporary?" Wade studied her face with the same careful attention he gave gates and wounds and frightened children. "We do not have to solve every season today."
That answer was exactly right and deeply annoying. Claire laughed. You are learning ranch time. Slow, muddy, expensive, and stubborn. Outside the pantry, Ranger sneezed. Wade opened the door to find Ben crouched behind the dog with a cookie in hand. Were you listening? Wade asked. Ben looked guilty for half a second, then brave. Only to see if we are staying. Claire knelt. You are staying, for now. Ben's eyes widened. In the house? Wade began. Ben, but Claire answered. In the house tonight. The bunkhouse needs work before humans, dogs, or tax-resistant horses live there. Ben hugged her so suddenly she rocked back on her heels. Wade watched, eyes bright. Claire hugged the boy, gently startled by how naturally her arms remembered what to do. The following days carried a different urgency. Not the panic of attack, but the labor of repair. Owen's offices yielded enough records to expand the investigation beyond Hollow Pine. Several neighbors discovered similar predatory clauses. Mitch Doyle cooperated in exchange for consideration, and though no one admired him, his statements helped untangle the hired harassment. The spring water tested safe after professional remediation. The planted documents were traced. The bank board offered a restructuring review that Claire's lawyer described as an apology wearing a necktie. Claire did not forgive quickly. She did, however, negotiate hard. Wade became part of the ranch's rhythm. He repaired the bunkhouse roof with Eli-built secure storage for fuel and tools, and taught Riley how to make checklists that did not require her to carry the weight of the world. Claire enrolled Ben in the local kindergarten for the fall after he asked whether school had barns. Emma gained a soft roundness in her cheeks that made Marlene weep over a saucepan. Ranger settled into Hollow Pine with the seriousness of a dog promoted to a post he had always deserved. He and Sunday developed a friendship based on mutual suspicion and shared dislike of coyotes. Button learned to follow Riley's voice. The house gathered noise like a quilt gathers patches, but healing was not tidy. Wade still woke some nights and stood on the porch until the sky paled. Claire still reached for Aaron's mug and felt pain strike fresh. Riley still panicked when paperwork arrived. Ben still asked without warning if mothers could see ranch lights from heaven. Emma still cried in the old hour when Hannah had died, though babies did not know clocks, and grief did. The difference was not that sorrow left. The difference was that no one had to hide it to be allowed at the table. One evening, 2 weeks after the tunnel rescue, Claire found Wade replacing the barn light's cracked glass. He stood on a ladder, the sunset behind him, Ranger supervising from below with unnecessary severity. "Careful," Claire called. "This fixture has a history of shocking men who think they know everything." "Then I am safe." "Because you do not know everything? Because Ranger would never let electricity embarrass me publicly." The dog yawned, uncommitted. Wade tightened the screws and climbed down. When he switched the light on, gold spread over the barn door, brighter than before. Claire stood beside him. "Aaron hung it crooked," she said. Wade looked up. "I kept it crooked." She turned to him. "Good." The moment held. Then Travis's cruiser rolled up the drive, slower this time, no lights. He stepped out with a folder and a smile so tired it had earned the right to exist. "News," he said. Claire braced automatically. Wade noticed. Travis held up one hand. "Good news. The preliminary fraud review supports voiding the acceleration clause. The bank is offering a corrected long-term note at reduced interest pending final signatures. And Price Valley Development's easement filing has been withdrawn." Claire stared. Words came slowly. "So, Hollow Pine." Travis smiled. "Stays Hollow Pine." Marlene, who had appeared from nowhere because good news had a scent she could detect, said, "Well, do not just stand there. Somebody ring something."
Ben ran to the porch and rang the old dinner bell until Sunday complained, Button startled, and Ranger barked once because celebrations required order. The sound carried across the fields not like victory over enemies, but like a home remembering its own name. Spring widened after that, not with sudden warmth, but with small permissions. The ground softened, the creek ran fuller. Grass pushed green through places that had looked finished a month before. Hollow Pine Ranch did not become easy. Easy belonged to brochures and people who had never carried feed through mud. But the air changed. The old pressure that had made every morning feel like a countdown eased enough for Claire to hear other sounds, Riley laughing in the tack room, Ben arguing with Sunday about whether horses had opinions. Emma's hungry cry turning stronger, Ranger's paws clicking across the porch boards as he made his rounds. The ranch still needed repairs. So did everyone on it. But need no longer felt like proof of failure. It felt like a list they could meet together. The corrected banknote arrived on a Thursday, delivered by a temporary manager from Price Valley Bank, who looked as if he had practiced humility in the mirror and found it uncomfortable. Claire's lawyer reviewed every line. Denise reviewed the signatures because no one trusted ink anymore. Travis stood by as witness. Marlene brought pie and said nothing sweet to the bankman, which required visible effort. Wade stayed outside with the children during the final review, saying the room already had enough adults and not enough oxygen. Claire knew the real reason. This was her land, her signature, her fight. He would stand near, but he would not stand over it. That mattered more than if he had tried to protect her from every hard chair and legal phrase. When Claire signed, her hand shook a little. She let it. Courage did not require pretty handwriting. The new terms voided the fraudulent acceleration, reduced the interest for a probationary period, and opened investigation into prior payments Owen had misapplied. It did not make her rich. It did not erase the winter losses. It did not bring Aaron back, or undo the months of fear. But it gave Hollow Pine time that had not been purchased by surrender. After the bankman left, Marlene cut the pie into uneven wedges and declared them legally binding dessert. Travis accepted 2 slices and said he was building strength for paperwork. Denise corrected 3 commas in the copy of the note before allowing anyone to relax. Claire carried her slice outside and found Wade by the bunkhouse measuring boards for the porch steps. The old building sat west of the barn, sturdy but neglected, with a roof patched in 2 colors and windows that looked surprised to be opened. Wade had refused to move the children there until it was clean, warm, and safe. Claire had not argued. Some care should not need defending. "Signed," she said. He looked up, saw her face, set the tape measure down. "Hollow Pine stays Hollow Pine." Hollow Pine stays stubbornly expensive. His smile came slow. "Congratulations." She handed him the pie. "Marlene says this is legally binding." He took the plate. "Then I accept under protest." "You accept all pie under protest. Only when being watched by hostile witnesses." Ranger, lying in the shade, opened one eye at the word pie. Wade looked down. "No." Ranger closed the eye again, deeply wronged. For several days the ranch celebrated by working harder than ever. That was Claire's idea of celebration, and to her surprise, Wade's too. They cleaned the bunkhouse room by room. Riley chose pale blue curtains from a church donation box. Ben found a dented lunch pail and claimed it as a treasure chest. Emma slept in a sling against Wade while he sanded rough boards, her tiny fingers opening and closing near his shirt. Claire painted window trim with Marlene, who had opinions about everything, including shades of white. "That one is too hospital," Marlene said. "That one is too toothpaste. That one says a woman has surrendered to rental property." Claire dipped her brush. "It is white paint, Marlene. White paint has moral range." Riley nodded solemnly. "Miss Marlene is right." Claire looked at Wade.
Your daughter has joined a paint cult. Wade said she needed extracurriculars.
The humor helped. So did the work. The bunkhouse became not an exile, but a promise under construction. Wade wanted the children to have a place that was theirs, not borrowed from Claire's grief. Claire wanted that too, and also did not. She had grown used to hearing them in the house. Used to Ben's sock trails, Riley's lists, Emma's bottles, Ranger's strategic shedding. Attachment, she was learning, had no manners. It sat down in rooms before being invited and rearranged the furniture.
At night, she sometimes stood in the hallway after everyone slept and felt both terror and gratitude at the sound of breathing beyond doors. One afternoon, Dana Holt returned to Hollow Pine to walk the property with Claire. The investigation had widened. Owen's development scheme involved more than one parcel, more than one altered document, and several people who suddenly remembered important details once search warrants had a way of improving memory. Owen's attorney was negotiating, though Dana did not say for what. "You may not get every answer about Aaron's accident," she warned gently near the spring house. Claire had expected that. It still hurt. "But you believe he was investigating Owen?" "Yes. And Owen knew?" "Yes." Dana paused. "Whether the accident was caused by pressure distraction or something prosecutable we may not be able to prove. I will not promise what evidence cannot carry." Claire looked at the water moving clear beneath the old stone arch. "Aaron hated false promises. Then I will not offer one." Claire respected her for that.
That evening, Claire sat in Aaron's office and listened to his recording one more time. Not because she needed evidence, but because she wanted to hear his voice without collapsing. Wade knocked on the open door and waited. "Come in," she said. He stepped inside. Ranger stayed in the hallway, perhaps deciding ghosts were above his rank. Aaron's voice filled the room. "Keep the barn light on. Somebody good may need it one night." Claire stopped the recording.
"I thought he was telling me to help someone else," she said.
Maybe he was.
"Maybe he was telling me to let someone else help me."
Wade leaned against the bookcase. "Knowing Aaron through his tool labels and death messages, I suspect he meant both." Claire laughed softly.
"He would have liked you."
Wade's face changed, grief and gratitude crossing it together. "I hope so."
"He would have teased your knots."
"My knots are excellent."
"Then definitely."
They did not touch. The room did not ask them to. Something between them had matured past the need for every feeling to announce itself. Claire trusted Wade with silence now. He trusted her with the fact that some nights he stood outside not because danger was near, but because peace felt suspicious. They were not healed people falling into a perfect love story. They were two adults with bills, children, ghosts, and chores, learning where their edges could rest without cutting each other. That felt less shiny than romance and more sacred. Marlene's subplot, as she called it, after overhearing Denise use the word in book club, became the Hollow Pine Community Fund. She started it with a coffee can beside the diner register labeled "Help Before Folks Have to Beg." The first week brought $43, 2 gas cards, a grocery voucher, and a note from Herb that said he could repair 1 fence a month for a veteran widow or anybody too proud to ask. Marlene taped the note behind the counter where Owen's old business card used to sit. "I spent years afraid of losing customers," she told Claire. "Turns out, a diner without courage serves smaller portions." Claire said, "That is almost wise. At my age, almost is plenty." Travis changed too, though, slower and with more paperwork. He began holding monthly rural safety meetings at the Grange Hall, not the fear-mongering kind, but practical sessions on reporting intimidation, documenting property damage, and checking on neighbors before a crisis. At the first meeting, Ben raised his hand and asked if mean smiling was legally suspicious. Travis answered with a straight face, "Not by itself, but it may support further observation." The room laughed.
Owen's name was not the only lesson now. Silence had been put on notice. Riley's change came in quieter shapes. She began sleeping through the night. Not every night, but some. She let Claire brush her hair once when a knot defeated her. She started calling Claire Miss Claire instead of Mrs. Donovan or the ranch lady, and the title sounded less like caution each week. She wrote Hannah's favorite bread recipe on a card from memory, then asked if they could try it. The first loaf came out dense enough to qualify as building material. Wade ate 2 slices and said it was perfect. Riley narrowed her eyes. Mom said lying about bread is how families lose trust. Claire laughed until she had to sit down. The second loaf rose better. Ben adjusted by asking the largest questions at the worst times. While Claire was cleaning tack, he asked if Aaron and Hannah knew each other in heaven and whether they had horses or only clouds. Claire told him she was not sure about the logistics, but believed love made introductions. He accepted that, then asked whether God liked biscuits. Marlene, passing by, said, "Obviously." Wade found Claire later and thanked her. She shrugged. "I am improvising theology between saddle soap and lunch." "Best kind," he said. The ease of the exchange stayed with her. Emma simply grew. That was her miracle. Her cheeks filled. Her fingers found Claire's thumb and held it with startling authority. She learned the difference between Wade's footsteps, Riley's singing, Ben's nonsense, and Ranger's wet nose. Claire discovered that babies could make time feel both urgent and suspended. One evening she rocked Emma in the chair by the window while Wade repaired a cabinet hinge. The room was quiet and the warm kind. "You are good with her," Wade said. Claire looked down at the baby. "She is good at assuming people will hold her. That is a gift. And a command." He smiled. Also true. The legal case did not resolve quickly, but it moved. Owen was charged with multiple financial and property-related offenses. Mitch Doyle and others faced consequences of their own. Price Valley Bank changed hands in practice before it changed signs. The development filings were withdrawn. Owen's white hat disappeared from town, replaced in local memory by the image of him muddy outside the tunnel, which no one mentioned politely, but everyone remembered. Claire refused interviews from a regional paper because she did not want Hollow Pine turned into spectacle. She did agree to let the church newsletter write about the community fund as long as Marlene was quoted accurately, and Ben's question about mean smiling was omitted for legal dignity. One Sunday in late spring, the little church outside Joseph held a service of thanks for rain recovery and neighbors who came late, but came. Claire had not attended regularly since Aaron died. Faith had felt too much like a room where everyone expected her to speak gently. But Marlene asked Riley wanted to hear the hymns Hannah used to like, and Wade said he could stand near the back if needed. They went in 2 vehicles because Emma required more equipment than most military operations. Ranger stayed outside under the shade with Sunday tied nearby for the children's afternoon ride, and the 2 animals ignored each other with deep affection. The hymn was one Hannah had loved. Wade's face went still when the first notes rose. Riley slipped her hand into his. Claire stood on his other side, not touching him close enough. The words were old and simple. They did not fix anything. They did not explain why Aaron died or Hannah died or why Owen had been allowed so many years of power. But they gave grief a place to sit among living voices. Claire sang softly. Wade did not sing at first. Then halfway through he joined on one line, voice rough and low. Riley leaned against him. Claire looked down at Emma sleeping in Marlene's arms across the aisle and felt for the first time in a long time that faith might be less about answers than about not having to stand outside the song forever. After church, the whole group returned to Hollow Pine for lunch under the barn light, though it was noon and the light was not on. Tables were made from boards on sawhorses. Marlene directed food traffic.
Travis burned one tray of rolls and was reassigned to lemonade. Dana Holt stopped by briefly out of uniform and accepted pie. Herb fixed a hinge without being asked, then was scolded for working during lunch. Riley set out slices of the improved Hannah bread.
Ben gave Ranger a crumb and said it was communion, which caused Marlene to choke on tea and Wade to hide his face behind a napkin. Claire laughed freely. The sound crossed the yard, surprising even her. As evening settled and guests left, Wade found Claire near the new bunkhouse steps. The children were inside choosing beds, though Ben had already asked if Ranger could have the largest one. "We can move in tomorrow," Wade said. Claire looked through the window at Riley hanging the blue curtains. "You do not have to rush." "I know. The house has room." He turned to her. The offer was larger than the words, and they both knew it. "Claire, I want my children to know we are staying because we are welcome, not because fear pushed us into the nearest shelter." She nodded slowly. "That is fair. But welcome can include a bunkhouse. And dinner? Hopefully. And chores? Definitely." The ache in her chest was not rejection. It was the shape of something healthy taking its own time. He looked toward the barn light. "I am not leaving Hollow Pine." Claire's breath caught. He continued before she could answer too much or too little. "I do not know all the names for what is happening here. I know I have work. The kids are safe. Ranger has appointed himself sheriff, and when I think of home, this is where the picture starts." Claire looked at the house, the barn, the fields, the bunkhouse, all of it held in the amber wash of sunset. "That is enough for now," she said. Wade smiled. "For now." Ranger barked from inside the bunkhouse, followed by Ben shouting, "He chose my bed!" Wade sighed. "Operational command issue." Claire laughed. "Go negotiate with your sheriff." That night, Claire walked alone to the barn and switched on the yellow light. It glowed over the yard, steady, a little crooked brighter than it had been before. She thought of Aaron, of his warning and his love. She thought of Hannah, whose bread recipe now sat in Claire's kitchen. She thought of Owen, not with forgiveness yet, but without the old fear. Then she thought of Wade carrying Emma through rain, Riley holding a torn grocery sack, Ben defending Ranger's character, and the dog standing at the gate, as if he had known the ranch needed guarding before any human admitted it. Claire touched the post beneath the light. "Somebody good did need it," she whispered. Behind her, Wade's voice answered from the yard, gentle and sure. "More than one somebody." Claire turned, and this time when he walked toward her, she did not step back. June came to Hollow Pine Ranch wearing clear morning's warm dust and the green smell of hay almost ready for cutting. The mountains still held white along their highest lines, but down in the valley, the fields had entered that brief Oregon season when everything looked forgiven. Forgiveness, Claire was learning, was not the same as forgetting, and not the same as letting a thief keep what he carried away. It was more like clearing brush from a fence line, hard work, slow work, work that revealed where the boundary had always belonged. Owen Price's case continued in court, and there were days when legal updates still tightened Claire's stomach. But his power over her daily breathing had ended. Hollow Pine no longer woke up asking what Owen would do next. It woke up asking whether the hay mower would start, whether Button had gotten into the wrong pasture, whether Ben had hidden a biscuit in his boot for Ranger again. The bunkhouse was finished enough to be called finished by ranch standards, which meant one window still stuck and the porch steps squeaked in a way Wade claimed was a security feature. Riley had her blue curtains. Ben had a shelf for rocks that looked like States, animals, or once, according to him, Marlene. Emma had a crib near the east window where morning light came soft through cottonwood leaves. Wade had a small room with a narrow bed, a photograph of Hannah, his old dog tags, and a notebook where he wrote tasks for the week. Ranger had rejected all assigned sleeping locations, and chose the hallway between the children's doors because some forms of command could not be negotiated. Claire had offered the bunkhouse his space. The children turned it into belonging. Every morning, Wade crossed the yard before sunrise to start coffee in the ranch kitchen, because Claire's coffee, in his private opinion, tasted like fence stain. Claire accused him of treason and drank it anyway. They planned the day at the table with maps, feed receipts, and Emma's bottle warming in a pan. Sometimes Riley joined with her clipboard. Sometimes Ben arrived wearing one boot and asking whether cows had dreams. Sometimes Marlene burst in without knocking, claiming that knocking wasted time among people who had seen each other cry. The house did not belong to the past alone anymore. Aaron's mug still sat on the shelf. Hannah's bread recipe hung near the stove. Loss had not been erased to make room for new love. It had been given a chair at the table and told to stop blocking the doorway. The first hay cutting became a community event, partly because Hollow Pine needed help, and partly because Marlene had told half the county that anyone who had gossiped during Claire's trouble could repent through labor. Trucks arrived before dawn. Herb brought equipment. Eli managed crews. Travis came off duty and worked badly but cheerfully until Claire reassigned him to water coolers for public safety. Dana Holt sent a note saying she was glad the field was still a field. Denise brought labels for lunch containers which nobody asked for and everyone used. Riley rode with Claire in the tractor cab for the first round, serious as a pilot. Ben sat on the fence with Ranger and informed passing workers that the dog was supervising hay quality. Ranger accepted this title with solemn boredom. Wade worked the mower after Claire showed him the machine's moods. He listened carefully, asking about the rattle near the belt, the dip in the lower field, the place where Aaron had always slowed because of a buried stone. Claire watched him absorb the ranch, not as a conquest, but as a language. He did not know every word yet, but he was learning pronunciation. When the mower jammed near the creek, he shut it down safely and waited for Claire instead of forcing the issue. "Thought you fixed rude machines," she said, climbing down. "This one asked for a translator." Together they cleared the jam and checked the blades. Their shoulders brushed once. Neither made a joke. Some moments did not need protection. At noon, everyone ate beneath shade tarps near the barn. Hannah's bread sat beside Marlene's fried chicken and Claire's lemonade, which Ben described as almost not sour. Claire accepted the compliment with dignity. Ranger stole nothing for 27 minutes, a personal record, then compromised his legacy with half a roll. Sunday nosed through a feed bucket and looked innocent. Button, bigger now and still foolish, attempted to follow Riley into the lunch area and had to be redirected with both patience and promises. The sound of people eating and teasing and calling across the yard rose into the warm air. Claire sat on an overturned crate and looked around at the impossible, ordinary beauty of it. Mud on boots, grass on sleeves, baby laughter, grief softened by use. Marlene sat beside her with a paper plate balanced on one knee. "You are staring," she said. "I own the place. I am allowed." "You almost lost it staring alone." Claire glanced at her. Marlene's voice had no scold in it now, only truth. "I know. I did too." The older woman watched Wade lift Ben down from the fence and set him on his feet. "That man loves those children like breathing hurts without them." "Yes." "And you?" Claire looked down at her lemonade. "I am learning them." Marlene bumped her shoulder. "That is not what I asked." Claire smiled despite herself. "I am learning him too. Slow woman. Careful woman. Same boots, different mud." That evening, after the hay was cut and the fields lay in clean green rows, Wade found Claire at the spring house. The water test results had come back clear weeks earlier, but Claire still liked to check the place. Not out of fear anymore, out of respect. The spring had nearly been used as a weapon against her, yet it kept doing what springs do, offering cold water without drama. Wade carried 2 tin cups. He filled them and handed one to her. "To legally documented water," he said. Claire raised her cup. "To stubborn old blessings." They drank. The water was so cold it ached in her teeth. Wade leaned against the stone wall. "I got a call today." Claire turned. "From who?" "Veterans Resource Office. The caseworker connected me. There is a program in LeGrand that helps with family housing, counseling, job placement. They said I qualify." A quiet fear moved through Claire before she could name it. "That is good." "Yes." He watched the water. "They asked if I wanted placement closer to town." The spring seemed louder for a moment. Claire kept her voice even. "Do you—" Wade looked at her then. "No." The answer was simple, but not careless. "I told them I have work and housing at Hollow Pine. I will take counseling. I will take help figuring out benefits. I will take anything that makes me a better father. But I am not looking for another place to disappear into." Claire breathed out slowly. "Good." He smiled faintly. "That all, do not get greedy." He stepped closer, leaving enough space for choice. "Claire, I do not want gratitude to wear the face of love. I do not want grief to mistake shelter for forever. I have 3 children, a dog with authority issues, a past that still knocks at bad hours, and no talent for pretending I am simpler than I am. That is a terrible proposal." His laugh came surprised and warm. "I am not proposing. Good, because you would need editing. I am saying I want to stay. I want to build something here slowly, honestly, with work boots on. If one day that something has another name, I want it earned." Claire looked at him and the man who had come through rain asking for a barn, and had stayed to help her open every locked room. "For a man who is not proposing," she said, "you are improving." He held out his hand. Not to pull her, not to claim, just held it out. Claire took it. His palm was rough, warm, real. The spring moved beside them. Above the pasture, swallows cut quick, dark arcs through gold light. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the gift. No rescue in the rain, no courthouse crowd, no tunnel lights, just 2 people holding hands beside cold water, letting the future approach at a walk. The happy ending did not arrive as a single scene. It arrived in installments. Riley started school visits and decided the library was acceptable because it smelled like paper and nobody asked too many questions. Ben learned that kindergarten did not have a barn but did have blocks, which softened the disappointment. Emma rolled over for the first time on a quilt in Claire's living room while everyone cheered so loudly she scared herself and cried. Ranger passed a veterinary exam, gained 2 pounds he did not need, and was placed on what the vet called biscuit moderation, a phrase Ben considered unconstitutional. Marlene's community fund helped a widower repair his truck and a young mother buy groceries before she had to ask twice. Travis's rural safety meetings grew from 8 people to 31, not counting Ben, who attended because of snacks. One Sunday in July, the church held a potluck at Hollow Pine to bless the restored barn and the new community fund. Claire objected to the word bless at first, not because she opposed blessing, but because she worried it might make the ranch sound finished. Marlene told her blessings were not gold stars for completion, they were rain barrels set out in faith. Claire had no argument for that. So the tables went up again, the lemonade improved slightly, and the barn doors stood open. The repaired light hung above them, still crooked, glowing even before dusk, because Ben had begged to turn it on early, in case someone good is nearby and needs directions. During the potluck, Pastor Jim, who had the gentle face of a man accustomed to crying babies and bad microphones, invited anyone who wished to say a few words. Claire immediately looked at Marlene in warning. Marlene looked innocent, which fooled no one.
To Claire's surprise, Wade stood. He held Emma in one arm. Riley and Ben stood near his legs. Ranger sat beside him, alert because public speaking might produce crumbs. Wade faced the neighbors, the church folks, the people who had come late,
The people who had come early, and the people still learning the difference.
When I came to this ranch, Wade said, I had a baby in my arms, 2 tired kids, a dog who trusted almost nobody, and nothing useful left except work. Claire opened the gate. She did not know us. She did not have extra money, extra time, or extra safety. She had every practical reason to say no. But she gave us a dry place and a job. People talk about heroes like they are loud. Most are not. Sometimes courage sounds like a gate chain in the rain. He stopped for a moment. Claire looked at the ground because if she looked at him, she might not survive the tenderness of it with dignity and tact. Wade continued, voice rougher. I also learned something from this town. Some of you were afraid. Some of you were late, then you came. Late help still has to apologize, but it can still become help. My family is standing here because one woman opened a gate, one diner owner told the truth, one deputy decided his badge had to weigh more than a bank account, and a lot of people chose to stop letting fear do their talking. Travis looked down. Marlene dabbed at her eyes with a napkin and pretended it was allergies. Ben whispered, Dad did not mention Ranger. Wade glanced down, and because Ranger allowed all of us to assist him, the yard erupted in laughter. Ranger's tail thumped once, accepting tribute. Then Claire stood, because she could not let him stand alone after that. Her knees shook, but that was old news. She looked at the barn, the light, Aaron's initials carved small on a beam near the door. My husband Aaron used to say no one should come home to darkness, she said. After he died, I kept this light on because I missed him. I thought it was a habit for a dead man. I know now it was also a promise for the living. Wade and his children came because they saw it, but the truth is, I needed it too. I needed to remember that a home is not proved by how tightly you lock it. Sometimes it is proved by knowing when to open the gate and who you become after you do. She paused, smiling through tears now. Also, if anyone here knows how to keep a German Shepherd out of biscuits, please see me after lunch. The potluck dissolved into laughter hugs and the practical chaos of too many casseroles. Pastor Jim said a short prayer over the barn, the fields, the children, the workers, the absent loved ones, and even those who had done wrong and now faced truth. Claire did not close her eyes for all of it. She looked at the people instead. That felt like prayer too. Aaron's memory stood there without pain swallowing it whole. Hannah's song came later when Riley asked Wade to sing the hymn from church, and he did softly, with Claire joining on the second verse. No one was fixed. Everyone was held. At sunset, after the last truck left and Marlene finally allowed someone else to wash dishes, Claire walked to the barn with Wade. Riley carried Emma nearby. Ben ran ahead with Ranger, both of them equally convinced they were leading. The hayfields glowed. Sunday stood at the fence with Button beside him. The barn light cast a warm circle on the ground, and for once there was no threat hiding at its edge. Wade stopped under it. Ben asked if we are still sleeping in the barn, he said. Claire laughed. What did you tell him? That we never really slept in the barn. We were just waiting for the house to notice us. Claire looked at the bunkhouse, then at the main house, then at the people who had become woven through both. It noticed. Wade took her hand. This time there was no hesitation. Ben turned around. Miss Claire? Yes? If Daddy stays forever, does Ranger have to pay rent? Riley groaned. Wade closed his eyes. Claire pretended to consider seriously. Ranger pays in security, unauthorized biscuit detection, and emotional supervision. Ben nodded. That is a lot. Ranger barked once, satisfied with the contract. Emma squealed at the sound.
Riley laughed. Wade laughed. Claire laughed too, and her laughter moved across Hollow Pine Ranch in a way it had not since Aaron died, not replacing the old music, but adding a new harmony. The retired Navy SEAL who had arrived with nothing but children grief and a loyal dog had found work shelter and a future he did not have to earn by bleeding himself empty. The widowed ranch owner who had believed strength meant standing alone learned that help did not make her smaller. The children who came through rain found beds, school plans, chores, and the safety of adults who told the truth. Ranger found a ranch worthy of guarding and a horse worthy of ignoring. Hollow Pine remained scarred, as all living places are. But beneath the crooked yellow light, scars were no longer proof of ruin. They were proof that something had survived long enough to be loved again. Sometimes God sends help in a form we do not expect. It may look like a tired father at the gate, a child brave enough to tell the truth, a neighbor who finally speaks up, or a loyal dog standing between fear and the people he loves. This story reminds us that mercy is not weakness. Opening your heart does not mean ignoring danger. It means letting love and wisdom work together. Claire did not save her ranch alone, and Wade did not heal his family alone. They found grace because they accepted help, told the truth, and kept one small light burning through the storm. If this story touched your heart, comment Amen and share it with someone who needs courage today. May your home be filled with protection, honest friends, and the kind of faith that keeps a light on for whoever God may send next.